What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the Week 8 Friday afternoon AMA. Apologies for everybody for not being here last week. I had to cover on the 4for4 side. John Paulson took a small trip out over the weekend, so I had to cover for him with Matt Okada on the 4for4 channel last week at the exact same time, 12 p.m. Eastern time. So apologies for missing last week, but we are back this week for the Week 8 Friday. Or to those of you out there who celebrate, it is also Oronde Gadsden Day. So if you celebrate that with me, as I'm sure most of you do, congratulations on all of your Oronde Gadsden shares. It seems like, honestly, that I tweeted this last night. I think unless Colston Loveland is going to start like breaking out over the second half of the year, it seems like Oronde Gadsden is like the dynasty tight end 4. If you want to argue him versus Kraft or Laporta, I get it. I understand it still, but man, I mean, Oronde Gadsden looks like the legitimate like top 4 dynasty tight end. I'm not putting him up there with, Bowers, McBride, and Warren right now, but holy crap, man, he looks so freaking good. This is honestly, I think this might be better than what I thought that his ceiling could actually be. I mean, I thought that he could be, kind of like Darren Waller. That was my comp for him pre-draft. But I don't even know if I expected this, or if I did, I didn't expect it this soon. So it's been really, really fun to see Oronde Gadsden. So I love and I love seeing everybody else saying that they were able to pick him up in rookie drafts or on waiver wires and everything like that. So congratulations to all of you as well for stashing Gadsden for right now and then reaping the rewards of it. Dylan with the $5 super chat to kick things off. Thank you so much, Dylan, for your support here. He's asking, traded David Montgomery for Romo Dunze. Other running backs are Taylor, Dobbins, Harvey, and Monangai. Would you drop Monangai for Isaiah Davis with the Breece Hall rumors? I really like the Monty for Odunze. I'm assuming this is a redraft league. So I think the kind of sell high on David Montgomery and the buy low on Roma Dunze is phenomenal after 2 bad games for Dunze, but his schedule for the rest of the year is pretty solid. And I'm expecting, honestly, this week could be really good. So props to you for that one, for trading away Monty for Dunze. Now, with the other running backs, you have Taylor, Dobbins, Harvey, Monangai. And then you're asking to drop Monangai for Isaiah Davis. I do like stashing Isaiah Davis. The probability that Breece Hall gets traded seems to be relatively high right now, which just, makes sense for everybody involved to get off of get him off the Jets, for the Jets to get off of Hall before he just walks in free agency and at least get something for him. Would I drop Monangai for him though? Monangai he's been coming on as of the past week or two. They had a very, very early week 5 bye, and then obviously had a really good game last week, but they ran the ball a ton because they just kind of were able to against the Saints. But outside of that, hasn't done all that much. I'm curious to know, Dylan, who else is on your team. Assuming you don't have like positional limits or something like that. There's there are leagues that I know out there that still do positional limits, which is stupid. So I'd be curious to know who else you have that maybe there's a depth wide receiver or quarterback or somebody that you can drop instead. So then you have Monangai and Isaiah Davis. But probably, when's the deadline? November 4th, which is 2 Tuesdays from now. I would be curious to see if you can get through this week. Because he's not going to be traded today, tomorrow, or Sunday. Maybe he could be traded Tuesday or Wednesday in and around waivers. Only 4-person bench. My bench is Harvey, Monangai, Brian Thomas, and Purcell. Oh, okay. So it is Monangai then as your chopping block guy. I'm cool with it, to be honest with you. I'm okay. I do like Monangai, but he will require a DeAndre Swift injury, which is also likely. Or no, I wouldn't say likely. It's possible that DeAndre Swift gets hurt and then he assumes, the full backfield. And if Brees Hall were to get hurt, then Isaiah Davis would assume the full backfield as well. And then especially if he gets traded, then Davis would have that full backfield. Then you have to ask yourself, would you rather have the full backfield of the Bears or the full backfield of the Jets? Uh, which right now is easily the Bears. But I just feel so. I'm sorry, this is like really bad and really long for everybody else, but I just don't know how I feel about dropping Monangai for Isaiah Davis. I don't have a clear cut answer. If you want Isaiah Davis, if you want to drop Kyle Monangai for Isaiah Davis, I'm cool with that. I won't argue against it. But I feel like if I were in your shoes, I would let Isaiah Davis stay on waivers through this weekend of games and then maybe pick him up next week and see what the Bears do this week against the Ravens. Which it might not be a good game for Monangai, especially if, sounds like Lamar's going to be back. So if the Bears are going to be playing catch up more often, Monangai might not get as involved. But if Swift were to get hurt, Monangai is definitely, I think, the better running back to have if Swift were to get hurt versus Davis if Hall were to get hurt or traded. So that's why I want to keep Monangai. But I'm cool with you dropping him for Isaiah Davis if you want him. So it's a very wishy-washy answer, and I apologize for that, especially on a super chat. But that's just how I'm feeling on this one personally. So I do apologize. Hope that was a good answer. I don't know if it actually was a good answer. I'm going to grade myself a D for that answer, but yeah, because I don't feel like I helped you. But thank you so much for the super chat though, and for the support. And I hope whatever the decision is that you make ends up being the right one. To be honest with you, because we only have one more waiver run before the NFL deadline. Because the deadline is on a Tuesday, so waivers won't run before until after it. So we only have one more waiver one before that. And I just feel like you could ride Monangai for the week, or for the weekend, I should say, then pick him up, pick Davis up next week if you want to. Bo started early this morning before the stream even started. So what's up, Bo? 12 team start 10, Superflex, tight end premium, half PPR, or extra half tight end premium. We got McBride, Fanning, Gazin, and Hawkinson. As a Viking fan, should I sell Hawk and how? Wide receiver room is Amon-Ra, Puka, Nico. Wow. Yeah. You got a great wide receiver room. They're just all either hurt or on bye. So that's unfortunate. I would like to sell TJ Hawkinson. I mean, he's the most expendable of this whole entire group. Obviously, McBride is a weekly starter for you. Gazin seems to be coming in to be in a weekly start for you. Fannin is a pretty solid weekly start. And then Hawkinson is just kind of like whatever. So I feel like if you could get a second round pick for TJ Hawkinson, I'd be on board with that. If you want to use him to try to upgrade a different position, either at running back, or upgrade him and Terry McLaurin for a better wide receiver or a younger wide receiver. Maybe it's like Terry and Hawkinson for Jalen Waddle or something like that. Or I'm trying to even think of who other wide receivers are. Do the same thing with, I don't know who your running backs are, but you could do the same thing. Or like I said, just cash out for like a second or something like that. McLaurin and Hawkinson for Ricky Pearsall, for Chris Olave, maybe if you wanted to buy low on Matthew Golden, if you wanted to buy low on Quentin Johnston while he hasn't really been doing anything. Waddle, Devonta Smith, Travis Hunter. I don't know if you can do any of those kind of names with Terry and Hawkinson, I would love it. But yeah, I would definitely, personally, if I were you, even though that you're a Vikings fan, I would be trying to sell TJ Hawkinson. Maybe you get Jordan Addison. I don't know. And just upgrade your wide receiver room a little bit, or your running back room, whoever it is that you've got. But yeah, I'm cool selling off of Hawkinson. And I think you could get somewhat decent value given that it's a tight end premium league. Just got to find that one team that doesn't really have much to offer at the tight end position. D with the $20 super chat, man. Thank you so much for the support. So shout out to you, bro, and the guys in the Discord, Scott, Eli, and everyone that's in there, always chopping it up. Thank you so much for the super chat and the support, man. And yeah, I love the DLF YouTube Discord. So for those of you who might be in here and don't know, we do have a separate Discord channel for just like for the YouTube. So there's the big DLF Discord, which just has the normal blue logo, but then there's a separate DLF YouTube Discord that's the blue background with the white DLF logo, and it has the little YouTube logo in the middle. So I'm in both of those. I don't really have notifications on for the big one. But if you like tag me in there, I will see it and I'll answer. But in the DLF YouTube Discord that D is talking about, I have notifications on for everything for that one. So, and there's, like you said, there's Scott, Eli, there's a handful of other people in there that are always in there willing to answer questions, or ask questions of their own that then you can answer. We're just constantly talking about dynasty in there. And we celebrated a little bit of Rondé Gadsden last night. So yeah, D, thank you so much, man. I mean, the $20 super chat is a lot, and I appreciate you for that. So thank you so much, and thank you for being a big supporter and contributor in the Discord channel, man. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you. Chase, thinking about rebuilding. I have Puka in a Superflex Dynasty tight end premium. What is the going rate from Mr. Pikachu? Sorry for the second message, but would it just be better to hang on to him and build around him? It could be. I think it depends on your team. So if you're looking at your team and Puka Nacua is like by far the best asset on your team, to where this is like a multi-year rebuild. We're talking like 2027 at the earliest, 2028 maybe, something like that. Just because you don't have a lot of good assets right now, or all of your assets are in draft picks that are a year or two down the road, and you need to hit on most of those or do whatever with them. So if you're in that kind of situation, I can be on board with selling a Puka Nacua at his value right now, or this season maybe, because he's hurt right now. But you should still get a pretty penny for him despite the injury. And that would make sense. But if you were a rebuilding team where you're like, I thought I could do it in 2025. Some of my rookies just weren't ready yet. Or I got a couple extra injuries that I wasn't anticipating, and I'm rebuilding, but it could be like I could be back in 2026, or maybe be really strong in 2027 if my 25 rookies that haven't hit yet, like Travion Henderson or RJ Harvey or something like that, if they do hit in 2026 and I hit on another rookie in 2026, maybe I could start competing next year. If that's the kind of rebuilder you are, I would be more willing to keep Puka in that situation. Because it's more of a reload than a rebuild. But if it's a rebuild where it's like a true multi-year rebuild and Puka is like far and away the best asset that you have, and it probably makes more sense to break him down into multiple assets that can gain a lot of value, or that you could hit on, multiple shots on rookies. That's probably the better play there in that type of rebuild. So what can you get for him? I mean, I would love if you could buy or break Puka down into, let's say, a Tedero McMillan and another first, Brian Thomas Jr. and a first and a second. If you could go for Marv and a first and a second, if it was Garrett Wilson and Lab McConkey, I think would be good tier downs. Maybe a Roma Dunze, maybe a Buka or Neighbors, depending on the teams that they're on right now. But I would be trying to tier down into, a fringe like top 12 young wide receiver, not like a Nico Collins or a um where was I like the T Higgins or anybody like that. It's got to be younger guy with upside, um, and assets on top of that. So that's why I like Tedero McMillan in a first, BTJ in a first and a second if you could pull that. Lad McConkey in a first and a second, Garrett Wilson in a first and a second, Rashee Rice in a first. Um, if you can get like Drake London in a first, Ibuka in a first, Neighbors in a first, like anything like that would be phenomenal, in my opinion, for Puka. So it just kind of depends on the other teams in your league, the roster that you have itself, and that could be how you trade Puka in a rebuilder. But like I said, if it's more of a reload situation, you're looking still at potentially competing in 2026 if a couple players go your way. I probably wouldn't be willing to sell um, Puka in that situation. Sorry, I'm talking a lot, and I feel like I'm not answering these questions as well. I'm not as sharp this morning. The kid woke up a couple times last night. He had a minor fever this morning, so he woke up a couple times last night, and I did not get the greatest of sleep. But we're here. Antonio, what's up, Addy? What's up, man? I'm all in on Aronde Gadsden, bought him for Strange in a second in one league. I'm phenomenal, and I have an offer out in another half tight end premium for Gadsden and Algier for Devonta. Is that a high or low price to pay? I would pay it, to be honest with you. Um, I think Devonta Smith is a very good wide receiver, but the difference that Aronde Gadsden, honestly, the way that they're both producing right now, they're both producing not that differently. So the fact that you get then an extra half tight end premium with Aronde Gadsden, you also get a high valued handcuff in Tyler Algier, who would be phenomenal if anything were to happen to Bijan Robinson. And in and of himself is a pretty decent start if you can pick the weeks where he's going to be pretty good. Like so far this year, the Falcons have won 3 games, and in those 3 games, he's averaging like 13 fantasy points per game. It's like 50 yards and a touchdown and maybe an extra catch or something like that. That's his averages in games won for the Falcons. And in the games that they lost, he's not good because it's all Bijan. So that's why I think he's a very sneaky start this week because against the Dolphins, he's very, very startable. Against a terrible Dolphins rush defense. They win the game. He scores a touchdown, has like 50 rushing yards, something like that. Like Algier's a good play and is a very good depth piece. So Gadsden and Devonta Smith, I don't think are all that dissimilar right now. When you tack on the extra half tight end premium, then you add on Algier as well. I think that's phenomenal. To go buy Aronde Gadsden for sure. And if he continues to keep producing and does become like this every week kind of elite tight end starter as a legitimate, like I have him. I'm saying that I think we could argue that he's a top 4, top 5 dynasty tight end right now. That's like me saying I could argue that. But like if that becomes consensus, I don't think that we look back on this. I think we look back on this deal if that becomes a consensus thing by the end of the year, or if he's even higher, that you bought Gadsden low for just Devonta Smith, and then adding in the fact that you got Tyler Algier as well. So yeah, I love it. Steve says, I seem to have solid rosters, but my weakness seems to be with starting rosters. What is your best known source for weekly start sit decisions? So I lean on John Paulson a lot. So he is the main head analyst over at 4for4.com, which is our sister site. So he has been one of the most accurate rankers over the past, I believe he's been doing this for 15 years or so. But at least over the past like decade, he's really honed in on his process of creating projections on a seasonal and a weekly basis. That I do rely on his thoughts and his process a lot when it comes to start sit decisions. I will like combat some of his thoughts, but it's not like a common occurrence for me to be like, I don't really disagree with John on this one. So that's why I lean heavily on him, just because I if he's doing a lot of that legwork for me in projections on a weekly basis, then I will just be able to kind of follow it blindly, and the process usually ends up working out well. The other thing that I think could lean into, if this is from like a dynasty lineup standpoint, this comes back to my personal beliefs on roster construction, which I like to have a lean and strong wide receiver core. So if you start 2 or 3 wide receivers every single week, that's your starting lineup requirements. I want to have maybe 4 or 5 guys that a couple of them are like top, you just lock them in, you don't even think about it. Another guy is a guy that could be like a really good, like, I don't really have to think about it kind of guy, maybe like a Cortland Sutton, or um, somebody like that, that's just like he's very good, just like wide receiver too. And then if you can get a couple of those guys, that'd be solid too. And that keeps me lean at the wide receiver position. I don't got to think about who to start. And if they suck, then they just kind of suck. Like I got a couple rosters where I don't really have anybody better to start than BTJ, but I don't really want to start BTJ every week. But I'm just kind of like, I'm just kind of running with it right now. So I swung and missed on BTJ for the year. Not to say that he's going to be a bad dynasty asset, but 2025 is just not Brian Thomas Jr.'s year. And I have a couple lineups like that. But thankfully, I also have lineups where I have Amon-Ra St. Brown and CeeDee Lamb, or I have Jackson Smith and Jigba and Rashee Rice now coming back, and I've also got AJ Brown, and like I have, but most of my dynasty teams are like that, where I have a couple of guys that can make up for an underperformer, and it keeps me lean at the wide receiver position, so then I don't have to make start sit decisions. Then my true start sit decisions come at the running back position, where you know I'm basically playing the matchups. I'm playing who's healthy. I'm playing who's getting workload. That really just becomes my start sit decisions every single week. Um, and through most of the year, with bye weeks and injuries, my start to sit decisions get pretty limited at the running back position, just based on who's healthy or who's not on bye. So basically, my whole entire roster construction, it is very dynasty oriented in terms of like the most valuable positions are wide receiver in all leagues, and our quarterbacks and super flex leagues as well. Tight ends can be pretty solid, but if you don't really have a top tight end, then it's just kind of whatever. And then running backs are your weakest position, or at least what I want to be is my weakest position, especially the RB2 spot, because they're very streamable on a weekly basis. And you can find guys like a Kamani Vidal or Rashad White or a Michael Carter, Bam Knight, those kinds of players throughout the course of the year, that when you keep your wide receivers lean, you can have a decent amount of those handcuff running backs, that you increase your odds of when a starter gets hurt, then you have been benefited from that with your running backs. So those are really my start sit decisions every single week. So I want to minimize, because I hate setting lineups. I want to minimize the number of start sit decisions that I actually make on a weekly basis. And in turn, that actually means my rosters end up being somewhat stronger, because that generally means I have just better players starting on a weekly basis than most teams at most spots. So for you, maybe it is just relying on a healthy source like John Paulson at 4 for 4 to give you start sit decisions, but then it also could be something of where I got 7 wide receivers that I'm choosing from every single week. Let me see if I can package 2 of them and then trade up for just one individual better wide receiver, or can I package 3 of them for one great wide receiver? Or if you have 7 or 8 guys and then you package 2 for ones, and you do that twice or even 3 times, all of a sudden you have a better wide receiver core. You have extra roster spots as well to then take shots on waiver wire guys. And if they hit, then they hit. You could flip them for ROI or just use them for the production for the week or two. But then that's also helping you by making less start sit decisions. So I just went on a massive tirade there for all of the reasons for why I also hate start sit decisions, but that leads into part of the reasons for why I construct my rosters in a certain way for Dynasty. So um, the answer for you, Steve, might be as simple as just check out John Paulson's rankings on 4for4, which they are behind a paywall. So if you use the promo code YouTube, you get 25% off, which I believe the subscription is slashed, given the fact that we're basically halfway through the season. So it should be at a much cheaper price for like just the base sub. And then you get an extra 25% off of that with code YouTube. So it could be as simple as that, or it could be, hey, can I make some trades to improve my roster, give myself fewer start sit decisions, and uh, just be a better team, and then don't have to sweat the Sundays. That's one of my least that and honestly, I think that is my least favorite thing about fantasy football is setting lineups every week. 'Cause that's why I don't want to make as many decisions. So, uh, yeah. So yeah, you're welcome, Steve. I saw you said thanks, Addison. So you're welcome. So hopefully that helped. Um, and I apologize to everybody else for talking really loudly or long about that. But that's one of my most um like core beliefs in terms of like roster construction for dynasty, and especially how it relates to start sit decisions. Because it's one thing that's really helped me out over the past few years. Cray, thoughts on trading a mid to early first, 27 first, and Gadsden for Marv and a 28 first? I'm keeping the 2 firsts in Gadsden. I'll be honest with you. I think Gadsden for a 28 first is pretty close right now. Somebody told me on Twitter because when I tweeted out about him being a potential top 4 guy, they said that they traded him away for a 27 first and they felt happy about that. And I said, I think that's good value right now, but I also could see a world where you regret that. um, so him for a 28 first, I think isn't all that bad. And if I were redrafting, which I know I just did the video on redrafting the 2025 class and he came out at the 2.03, but then he did what he did last night. That video came out before last night. I would probably have him above Loveland and Burden that I had him behind those guys. So that's a borderline first round pick redrafting 2025 after what we know right now. So then paying 2 firsts for Marvin Harrison Jr., I don't know if I'm doing that, especially if we're trading potentially early firsts. So I'm 2 firsts in Gadsden for Marvin and 1 first in 2028. I'll take the 2 firsts and Aronde Gadsden. But it's not a bad deal, but I just think that I just lean heavier on the pick side there. Burrito Master, how much do you value having a higher end tight end, have Kraft in a 12-team Superflex league, no tight end premium, and wondering about selling him? To be honest, Kraft, I think, is one of the more higher end tight ends. I mean, obviously, he's not in the same tier as like McBride or Bowers or Tyler Warren right now. If I would say this, if you have the luxury of having additional assets to them being able to add to Tucker Kraft to get to a McBride or a Bowers, I would love doing that. Because I would never turn down a good opportunity to acquire an elite tight end. And then I'll just hold on to them because they are that they're valuable enough to when you have them on your roster, I'm not really willing to move them. But they're not valuable enough to me to where I feel like I need to pay up for them in trades. So it depends on what the trade price actually is to acquire any of the elite tight ends. Like if it was Kraft and an early second gets you Bowers or McBride or Warren right now, I'll pay that. But if it was like Kraft and a first, I probably won't pay that. If you wanted to try to move over to an Aronde Gadsden, if you believe still like I do that Gadsden's probably a better dynasty tight end than Tucker Kraft, and maybe depending on how the other person feels about that, maybe they view Tucker Kraft as a good sell opportunity, like sell Gadsden for Kraft. It's a good ROI on his investment. But maybe you're getting Gadsden. He's on the up right now, and I think some people consider it a sell high because they think that he might just be coming back down. But I think there's also a possibility he just keeps going up. So I would say Kraft is a good enough tight end to where I'm happy with him on a weekly basis, but he's also not good enough while simultaneously being valued highly enough to where if you were easily able to springboard off of him into that upper echelon tier, I would not be against it. But if their prices for him to trade down from Bowers and McBride Warren are too high, as I mentioned, like Kraft in a first, that's just not worth it to me. But if it's anything less than that, I would be on board with that for sure. Or if it was some other like positional upgrades or something like that for them, um, I could see that being worth it. Torsten, hey Addison, desperation flex play and redraft Troy Franklin, Alec Pierce, or Kendrick Bourne. I think I'm playing Alec Pierce. Josh Downs is back, but Alec Pierce has low key been pretty solid. So that's my initial gut reaction in there. Paulson has Alec Pierce at wide receiver 31. He's got Kendrick Bourne at 37, and he's got Troy Franklin. Oh, am I missing him? 38. So Paulson's rankings have it going Pierce at 31, Bourne at 37, Franklin at 38. I would probably play Franklin over Bourne just because of the Dallas matchup. I mean, they're projected the same number of points. I wonder if this is like an alphabetical order situation. So he has them both projected for 8.1 half PPR points. And Franklin would go ahead of him in full PPR based on his projections for receptions and yards. So he would probably be fine with playing Franklin over Bourne as well. But he does have Alec Pierce projected for about a whole point more than Franklin and Bourne in half PPR. So that's where both him and I would lean. Is Alec Pierce this week against Tennessee, with Franklin being a solid number 2 option if you were feeling Franklin and you just wanted to go with your personal intuition of if you like Franklin, he would be our number 2. And wouldn't be bad with that either. So anyway, Vinny, what's up, Addison? Always appreciate the Friday streams and thank you for the Gadsden call. Been riding with that take since day one and it feels good. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. This is one of the greatest things right now is on one of the best parts about Dynasty is hitting on these like late round guys, especially these guys that like other people in your league are like, who even is that? How did you even know who that was? Why were you holding on to this guy? Or like, why did you pick him up? Blah, blah, blah. Like those types of late round guys. I remember the first one for me was Aaron Jones. Because I started playing Dynasty in 2016. He was in the 2017 class, and I was big in on Aaron Jones. I was also big in on Kenny Golladay, so I pretty much hit on both of them as late round guys before Golladay just fell off the face of the earth by going to the Giants. Yeah, so I've been chasing that feeling ever since. I got a hit of it with Elijah Mitchell because I was big in on Elijah Mitchell over Trey Sermon. And everybody was like, oh, Trey Sermon, 3rd round pick, everybody, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, nah, Elijah Mitchell's better. And Elijah Mitchell was better. And now, you know, I've had other hits of it to smaller degrees for sure. But then this Oronde Gadsden, man, it's one of the best parts of Dynasty Fantasy Football is hitting on these types of players. And the fact that I was able to hit on him and then advise everybody else to hit on him as well. It just feels good. It's definitely one of the better. It outweighs a lot of the other calls where I'm right, and it definitely makes me feel better about being wrong because I'm just like, hey, I had to go around to Gadsden. So it's been fun. It's been fun for sure. Mike, one quarterback, I have an early second and what to do with it. Will a quarterback be around the area of 201 to 206 in 2026? It could be. I would say I'm getting a little iffy about this quarterback class. I'm not going to lie. So I would say that there's probably a pretty decent option at quarterback in one quarterback leagues in that early second round range. It may not be the top 1 or top 2 guys. I could see them being more late firsts, depending on their draft capital. But I'm starting to cool on this quarterback class as a whole. Because it reminds me a lot of 2022. I'm not going to lie. Like Lenore Sellers is kind of giving me Malik Willis vibes. Drew Aller isn't really that good. John Mateer. I like Fernando Mendoza. I'm interested in Maeva, the USC quarterback, and Ty Simpson. But Ty Simpson gives me kind of Mac Jones vibes. So I'm just kind of like, you know, a little iffy on what this quarterback class is actually going to look like. And I pulled preliminary numbers for them for my marker system a couple of weeks ago. So we have a few more weeks of data for me to throw in there, but it just does not look phenomenal for this class. Um, so I would say that there is probably someone there, the 201 to 206 in this class, but it may not be anybody great. Like you have Baker and JJ McCarthy still has upside for sure. I mean, your wide receivers are pretty great. You got Gibbs, Judkins, and Hall. Travion Henderson's waiting. Um, Gadsden now at the tight end position. So you have like a really, really good team. So having that early second, I feel like I wouldn't necessarily be trading it right now unless you get like a really good upgrade off opportunity. Like if you're able to, I'm assuming you're competing because you have, or maybe you're not because you're missing Lamb and Neighbors for the most of the year, and Ladd wasn't that great, Marv wasn't that great. I don't know what your record is and if you're competing or not. So unless you have some good opportunity to like upgrade somewhere, like if it was Marvin a second gets you Drake London or something like that, or Emeka Ibuka. Uh, if you're not able to do something like that, I would probably just hold on to the second and then just try to gather as much information as you possibly can for this rookie class. And it might even be something that you can't even make a decision on until after the NFL draft, because so much is going to be determined by draft capital for this class too, landing spots, all that kind of stuff. So it's really hard for me to answer right now what exactly is going to look like in that range in one quarterback leagues. But it is also me saying that that could be a pretty solid player, maybe not at the quarterback position, but it could be a solid player at one of the other positions that if you take a shot on them, could kind of pay out for you. If we can find like this year's Cam Scadaboo or somebody like that in that early second round range. Burrito Master heard you were down on Saquon. I am. If you were a contender and if he was the main running back option that could be had, what would be the highest you'd be willing to pay for him? I'm not paying a first round pick for Saquon Barkley, so that probably eliminates any possibility of acquiring Saquon. And that pretty much feels like the answer. Like if you want to pay 2 seconds for Saquon Barkley, I'm fine with it. I'm not paying it first. And if you had your contenders first, you're like, oh, ideally it's the 112, but worst case scenario, it's maybe the 109, 110, something like that. I'm still not willing to pay that for Saquon Barkley because he is 100% on that list of players that if you were to, the worst thing that could possibly happen is you trade for Saquon Barkley with your first round pick, and then he has a season ending injury on that next week, and then you are screwed. Because you don't have a player that you thought was going to be in your lineup. You're not going to be able to recoup anywhere near the value of a first round pick for him because rebuilders aren't going to want to pay for him and other contenders aren't going to want to pay for him. And he's just like, he's not going to be a dead asset like the other injured players kind of feel like they are. The older ones like Evans and Eckler and James Conner and to a degree like Tyreek Hill as well. He won't be dead like those guys feel, but man, he's going to lose a lot of value. So that's why I'm just not willing to pay a first round pick. Which again, probably just eliminates the possibility of me even buying Saquon Barkley at all. So yeah. So no thank you to Saquon. David, 12-team Superflex 7-0. Should I feel obligated to trade my late 26 first or keep it? Only move I have been thinking is upgrading quarterback. Mahomes and Bryce as starters. Is it wild to send my first for Daniel Jones? I mean, Mahomes is one of your starters is phenomenal. He's kind of returned to being Patrick Mahomes, which is great. Bryce, I don't love. Is it wild to send my first for Daniel Jones? No, I don't think so. And I'm buying into Daniel Jones as a kind of long-term option. So it's kind of like if you had paid a first-round pick for Geno Smith in 2022, would you have been upset about that? And my answer is probably not, considering that he had a down year in 2023. He was still a top 20 quarterback. So maybe that's still worth like a late first. And then he was, I think, a top 15 quarterback in 2024. And then obviously is now dead. So Um, it probably was worth it to have paid a late first for Geno Smith in 2022 at this point in that season, and it would probably have been worth it to have paid a late first for Sam Darnold last year at this point. And if Daniel Jones continues that, obviously it was a massive W if you paid a late first for Baker Mayfield at this point in 2023. So it's if you think that Daniel Jones is going to kind of head into that territory of, revitalized quarterbacks, that the floor is Geno right now, a median is Darnold right now, and the upside is Baker right now, probably is worth a first round pick. Um, would I be willing to pay it? That probably wouldn't be my first option. I don't know if you have your other seconds or anything like that. Um, but maybe you could go see if you could just get through the year with an Aaron. You're 7-0 having started Bryce Young, which tells me that your roster is really, really good. So whoever you throw in that QB2 spot probably mostly doesn't really matter. Um, but can you optimize it is the question. So can you go get Aaron Rodgers for kind of cheap? Can you go get Joe Flacco for kind of cheap? Can you go get Matthew Stafford for kind of cheap? Those would be, I think I'd rather pay for those guys for less than a first than pay a first for Daniel Jones and then take that first into the offseason and then see what you get. And maybe, as I just mentioned, maybe it is another quarterback that you get with that late first that you kind of re-roll the dice on. So that then you have Mahomes as your QB1. You're seeing what Bryce Young maybe becomes. Maybe he's one of the next fixed quarterbacks in 2 or 3 years. If he goes to a different team, different situation. So you're still holding on to there. You have whatever that aging veteran was, which if it's Rodgers or Flacco, maybe they're not really going to do anything next year. Maybe they both retire. Maybe that's just, a sunk cost for this year. But if it's Stafford, maybe he's still playing this year. If it's, I'm trying to think of who else would even be in that rankings tier. If it was, no, I don't really want anybody else. Rattler? Do you pay a second for Rattler? I don't know. You probably don't even need to pay a second for Rattler. Or can you get Sam Darnold for cheaper? Like looking at Keep Trade Cut, Daniel Jones is QB 18. Darnold is QB 24. That tells me that if you might be able to get Sam Darnold for cheaper than your late first, than Daniel Jones. Or if you just add to your first round pick, is that going to get you Bo Nix or Jordan Love or Baker Mayfield? Then you're even more solidified at the quarterback 2 spot. And then you're just waiting to see what happens with Bryce Young. So I'm not against paying a first round pick for Daniel Jones, but it's not my first option to where I would try to shop around to see if I can either get somebody for cheaper who's just going to be fine for the remainder of the year. And if you get anything in 2026, that's just kind of the cherry on top. Or what do you have to add to that first round pick, and what player can you get from adding to that first round pick that could possibly be better for you? Because like I said, you're 7-0, having started Bryce Young as your QB2 for most of the year or all of the year. So that tells me that QB2 spot is not that important for you because your team is just that good. So it just is about optimizing your usage of that first. In the ways that I just described. So Vinny just joined the DLF YouTube Discord last week, and I've been loving it. That link is down in the description, by the way, of this video. I don't know if you need to leave the comment section to then see I don't know what the stream looks like from the YouTube perspective. If you need to leave the chat room to then see the description, but that link is in the description. If it doesn't work, let me know. But if you guys want to join in the Discord, that link is in the description of this video. And is in the link in the description, I believe, of all videos, or at least all AMA videos as well. That if you go to a different one to see the description, it's in there. Is trading Waddle and Coleman for Marks and Walker bait? Yes, I would take Waddle and Coleman. I don't really want Kenneth Walker or Woody Marks. I'd rather just have Jalen Waddle. He's the one individually the best player in this deal. Just give me Jalen Waddle on this. Danny's rebuilding in a 12-team Superflex was offered Tet and Marv for my JSN. Would a wide receiver core of Tet, Marv, and Rice be able to compete next year? It definitely could. Man, that is enticing. I would probably do it. This is a really good example of when I was talking about selling Puka to Chase up at the top of the show. When I was like, yeah, if your team can break down Puka into two really good assets, I would probably do it. And this is pretty much the definition of that just with JSN. I'm a big believer in Tep. I'm like a 50-50 believer in Marvin Harrison Jr., but I've been on record for months now saying that they just need to tear down that team and especially tear down that offensive system. That then, if they get a better offensive system in there, maybe a better quarterback, I still think Kyler could be fine. I think that offensive system just sucks. Petzing and Gannon don't know what they're doing at all. I think Kyler's fine to the degree of if they got a better offensive system and they just stayed with their commitment for Kyler for another year or two, just because of the contracts or whatever, that Kyler would be good enough of a quarterback to get Marvin Harrison a wide receiver one fantasy season. He's probably not the optimal guy to like unleash him to turn him into, you know, Justin Jefferson or whoever. That's not Kyler Murray, but Kyler Murray can definitely be a good enough quarterback to turn him into Nico Collins. So yeah. I would probably do this. I do think a wide receiver core of Tet, Marv, and Rice would be able to compete next year. You get the full season of Rice. You get year 2 of Tetero and McMillan. You get potentially a different offensive system for Marvin Harrison Jr. I would take Tet and Marv, I think, over JSN. It's so close. Like Jose's down here saying to keep JSN. It is so freaking close. I would probably do it though. I think I would trade JSN for Tet and Marv. It's more of my belief of Tet. But like Jose said, and I'm sure other people might feel like keeping JSN, I don't think is a bad decision either. Mitchell would send JSN for those two in a heartbeat. So there we go. I think I would sell JSN for this, especially as a rebuilder. If you were competing, it would probably be a different story. But if you're rebuilding, you're looking at 2026, 2027, I would probably just take Tet Marv. Lex, PPR redraft 12 teams league team. Lamar, nice. JT, nice. Jamar Chase, nice. Kittle, yep. Got an offer to trade away Dowdle, Chuba, Debo, and get Spears, Kyron, and Pearsall. Done. If Pearsall could just get healthy, I think he would be as good or probably better than Debo Samuel, especially because it seems like we're getting Terry McLaurin back as well. And we might not have Jaden Daniels for the next week or two. So I would take Pearsall. I don't like that you have him and Kittle, but that's fine. So I would take Pearsall over Debo if Pearsall can get healthy. I would definitely take Kyron over the Panthers running back situation. If Chuba is out for the rest of the year, I'd probably just say keep Dowdle. But with Chuba in there, I think this is going to be a really gross situation for the remainder of the year that I would just take Kyron and Pearsall. And you get Kyron to pair with Jonathan Taylor, so he's a very good RB2 next to JT. You get Pearsall, who, when healthy, it can be a very good wide receiver too behind Jamar Chase. You have Jawan Jennings too. Wow, a lot of Niners. I would still do this though. I think the main reason you do this is for Kyron Williams. And then if anything were to happen to Tony Pollard, Tyjae Spears would probably be a pretty solid start. More of a volume play than an offensive play, but then you get Trey Benson back here soon. I would do this deal. I would take Kyron and Pearsall. I'm not sure about having Pearsall and Jennings on my team. He also offered to take Hunter. No, I would keep Hunter over Debo. I would rather have Hunter than Debo just based on we're going into the bye week right now for the Jaguars, so I would be curious to see what his production looks like after the bye week, after what he just did to the Rams last Sunday. Um, I've just got a plethora of Bleacher Nation news for practice reports. Um, so yeah, I would keep Travis Hunter, and I'd be willing to trade Debo more, and then get mostly to get Kyron in that deal. If you can get somebody else other than Pearsall, I don't know what he has differently than Pearsall, but I'd be willing to do it with Pearsall in there. Realistically, what can we expect from Lamar? Should we consider streaming options this week? Um, I I mean, it's Lamar Jackson. He's been practicing for 3 days in a row now, because he's practicing today too. So I would be expecting Lamar to be pretty much Lamar. I would play him over Aaron Rodgers for sure. Flacco could be interesting. My fear with that game is that they just demolish the Jets. Um, and Flacco doesn't need to throw as much. Now, he could be a very good reason as to why they demolished the Jets and still put up 250 and 2. Um, but at the end of the day, man, it's still just Lamar Jackson. I am one of the people that are very hesitant to play guys the first week back from injury. But usually when it just comes to these elite players, I just don't really care. That did bite me in the butt with George Kittle. But at least with that game, the explanation for that was the Niners were just able to win with Christian McCaffrey. Um, whereas the Ravens do not win this week against Chicago without Lamar Jackson. So, I mean, if you think that the Bears are just going to shut down Lamar, that would be a different story. But at the end of the day, to me, it's still just Lamar Jackson. Paulson has him ranked as the QB3 on the week with 22 fantasy points. So I would just be playing Lamar. For reference, Lamar's QB3 at 22 fantasy points. Flacco's QB14 with 16 and a half fantasy points. Rodgers is QB20 with 15 fantasy points. So that is at least the projection difference between Lamar and the other two streamers that you at least threw out there. Now, if you wanted to say Lamar versus Bo Nix, who's against Dallas, or Drake May has a rough matchup against Cleveland. Love maybe could be interesting, but that also could just be a Josh Jacobs thing where they just demolish Pittsburgh with Josh Jacobs. Caleb Williams on the opposite side of the ball, I don't think I trust as much as Lamar. I think it's just going to be hard to find a streamer that I'm willing to play over Lamar Jackson just because it's Lamar Jackson. And then any Kincaid news, I got a Bleacher Nation alert earlier this morning. And NBC Sports is reporting that he is questionable. Did he practice today? Let's see. Dalton Kincaid injury update. This is from Bill's Wire. He is on the injury report, limited participant in practice. So it sounds like he is probably going to play. CBS says that he is questionable for Sunday. He's limited in practice today. So I'm assuming because he practiced today that he most likely is going to play. Now, does Paulson have him in here? Because I know Paulson doesn't like to. He has him in here as a tight end 4. I know Paulson sometimes waits to hear any sort of confirmation on players' availabilities, so he won't rank them. But he has Kincaid in here as the tight end 4, right next to George Kittle and Jake Ferguson, and ahead of Kelsey Goddard, Pitts, Otten, all those guys. He's got a great matchup against the Panthers. So if with how he's been playing, you probably don't have a better option. And Kincaid's probably a pretty solid start. Vinny, flex 1, Algier, Judy, Pierce, or Franklin. I'm probably going to play Algier here for floor. Now, if you need a lot of upside, like you're projected to lose decently this week, and you're just looking for upside, that's probably where I would chase a Troy Franklin game against Dallas for him to have, maybe he makes like a 40-yard touchdown catch or something like that, and he ends up like 7 for 80 and a touchdown. Algier is not a ceiling play unless he breaks a massive play, but I don't think he does. But I think Algier is a very solid. I need 10 to 14 fantasy points and I don't really need a dud game. I think that's Algier this week. I'm not even really considering Judy in this, and I think I think Franklin's a better play than Pierce for upside, because Pierce has to compete with Pittman and Downs and Jonathan Taylor, of course, whereas Franklin gets, you know, the wide receiver 2 role, maybe him and Marvin Mims, but they get Dallas. So I think Pierce is a better floor play than Franklin, but I think Franklin is a better stealing play than Pierce, which sounds maybe a little bit weird. But I think Algier is the best floor play out of all 4 of these guys. So if you're just looking for solid points, that's Algier. If you need a potential big swing, that would be Franklin for me. Sir Brooks with the $5 super chat. Thank you so much, man, for the support. No fantasy questions for me. Just wanted to say thanks for the advice for the past few years. You're a good dude and deserve the best. Appreciate you, Addy. Thank you so much, man. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for the support and everything. And that honestly, I'm like living the absolute best dream of working this job. So hearing that and then, seeing all the constant support every single week uh for the work is it's fun. It's really, really fun. So thank you so much. Fun fact for all of you guys, today is my wedding anniversary, my 5-year wedding anniversary with my wife. So I'm feeling a little extra, just a little extra like emotions this week, or today, I should say. So 5 years, man. We were a 2020, we were a pandemic wedding. The original date was July. Oh no. Hopefully, I think she can maybe hear me talking about this because she's downstairs. Um, the original date was July 13th or July 11th. Man, I can't remember. It's not July 12th because July 12th is my dad's birthday, and I remember it being either the day before or the day after. I think it's July 13th was the original date for the wedding, because I proposed to her on July 6th, I think, somewhere in there. It was a couple days after 4th of July in 2019 is when I proposed. So it was about a year after. And then that was like the original date. And then COVID hit and we didn't know what the heck was going on. So we had to push the wedding back 4 months to October 24th, 2020. So COVID wedding. We still had to wear masks and everything. Like all of our wedding pictures, we have like masks on. She had like this really like white beaded, like wedding dressy kind of mask. I had this like nice black one. All my groomsmen had nice black ones and stuff. So it was a mask wedding. Um, Wild times, but it was fun. It was fun though. Shout out COVID weddings. We're 10 20. Nice, dude. So you also just had a 5th year anniversary. Congratulations, Vinny. Evan's getting married next October, 10/11/2026. Let's go, dude. Let's go. October weddings are fun. I just went to 2 weddings on August and September. Sorry, nobody cares about any of this, but August and September, they're both really freaking hot. So our wedding in October that year in 2020, it was like a nice like 65 degrees. We were able to get pictures outside. It was kind of a little cloudy but a little sunny, so the pictures were really nice. It was really, really good weather. So it was fun. Connor snuck his in September 2019, right before. I'll never forget watching that. I think it was was it the Chiefs Niners? Was that the Super Bowl that year? I'll never forget watching it. I was watching it at my house with my friends. Yeah, Chiefs Niners, 31-20 Chiefs. And then Kobe Bryant passed away. Then we had like the Super Bowl, and then we had like all these other shenanigans and stuff like that. And then it was just like boom, COVID, everything's happening. What a wild time, dude. Fortnite was at its peak though that year. Congrats, that special. Thank you. What's the wood gift this year? We don't do the whole like, we actually didn't even get each other gifts because we're surviving a toddler. So it's just kind of the anniversary kind of snuck up on us. But I need to build a new mantle for our fireplace, and then I'm also wanting to reface our cabinets, our kitchen cabinets, and do that myself. So maybe that's the wood gift, is finally doing all of those things that I've been putting off for months. So we'll see. We'll see. But congratulations to everybody with all of your recent engagement, Vinny. Your recent anniversary, Vinny, I should say. Your recent uh, anniversary, Connor, for 6 years. Your upcoming wedding, Evan. Mustang, howdy, just got service to listen. What's up? What's up? Mike has been waiting here with this $2 super chat. So I appreciate you, Mike. He's been hearing all about this wedding and anniversary talk. So thank you so much for the $2 super chat. One quarterback, would you trade Judkins? I'm assuming, is that Ford? Oh, Judkins, Ford, Tet, and Trey Benson. Oh, I think I would. Dynasty, right? So if this was redraft, I would keep Judkins. Dynasty, I would take Tet and Trey Benson. In the rookie redo I did, they're in the same tier. Tet and Judkins are in the same tier. So if you wanted to argue that you'd rather have one over the other, that's fine. I had Tet 2 picks ahead, I think. He was 4. Dart was 5. Oh no, he was 3 picks ahead. Tet was 4, Dart was 5, Warren was 6, and Judkins was 7. So in that rookie redo, I had, like I said, same tier, but I had Tedero McMillan ahead still. And the fact that you're getting Trey Benson added on, I think pushes me more to that side. It's one of those deals where we come across them every now and then, where it's kind of like these players are so similar that whichever side had the decent, like, added on piece is the side that I would have chosen. So because Benson's on the Tedero McMillan side, I would take that side. But if it was Judkins and Benson for Tet, I would probably have taken Judkins and Benson. So this is primarily not so much because I like Trey Benson all that much, but I think he's a very good addition to either side of this deal. So because Tet and Judkins are so close, I would just take the side that has Trey Benson, and that is the Tedero McMillan side. In Dynasty, I'm assuming this is Dynasty. If this is redraft, I'm taking Judkins. But yeah. Thank you for the $2 super chat. Sir Brooks with another 5. Congratulations on your anniversary. Just celebrated my 2-year last week. Let's go, dude. Let's go. Thank you so much for the additional $5 super chat. Do you have any questions whatsoever? You've now sent $10 worth of super chats. If you have anything, don't send another one. You don't feel like you have to send another one. But if you had anything you wanted to discuss, Sir Brooks, after $10 worth of super chats, definitely drop it down in the chat. But yeah, dude, congrats on your 2-year anniversary last week. Big for all of us being football people, we all seem to be fall wedding people as well. Why are we, what are we doing there? Everybody in this chat that was just sharing about where their anniversary is or when they're getting married. If you're Evan, we're all football people, but yeah, we're all getting married in football season. What are we doing? What are we doing there? Saturdays though, Saturday fall weddings. If you can miss your college football game, that's fine. October 19th, checking in, dude. That was on Sunday. It may not have been a Sunday for you, but you had to celebrate this year on a Sunday. Wonder what that was like. Had to make sure the wedding venue had a bar for the games. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Our wedding, it was because the season got pushed back. So we're all my friends and everybody, we're all like Penn State fans and stuff. So that because the season got pushed back because of the COVID stuff, that day was supposed to be the whiteout game, but then it didn't end up being the whiteout game. And it ended up being the Indiana Penn State game, which if you may or may not know, but Penn State lost that game, I believe, in overtime. double overtime, or maybe right at the end of regulation. I can't really remember because I was not watching the game because it was my wedding night. But Michael Penix ran in the game-winning touchdown for Indiana that day. So let's find out. PSU Indiana game 2020. 36-35 Indiana. They were ranked 12th at the time. Scoring summary. Yep. They won. And yeah, they won in overtime. Clifford threw a touchdown to Parker Washington to go up at the beginning of overtime, but they did not make the extra, or they went for 2. I don't remember. But then after that, Penix ran in a touchdown. Or Penix ran in a touchdown to send it into overtime. That's what happens. And then Penix threw a touchdown in the first overtime to win the game for Indiana. Stupid Michael Penix, which is so funny because that was the 2020 season, and Michael Penix is in his second year right now. That's how freaking old Michael Penix is as well, which is so weird. And Parker Washington was in that game, and now he's out there. He's the wide receiver 1 for the Jaguars over Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter. You're the man, Addy. You've helped me for years about fantasy stuff. All I want to do today is support your platform. Well, I appreciate you, dude. Thank you so much for the $10 worth of super chats, and congratulations on your recent anniversary as well. Evan Spraying, the Cardinals have a bye week on his. It's Sunday. Oh no. Well, at least you have a decent shot. If it's next October, you're in bye week season at least. So at least you have a shot that you can have a bye week. If not, you're going to be sneaking glances over at your phone during the reception or in between pictures and stuff. She can go over. She can do pictures with her bridesmaids, and you're over there just like, hey, what's going on with the Cardinals game? Let's check it out. So that's what you're going to have to do. All right, enough of all this. Where did I leave off on these questions? People are waiting. Connor didn't take Gazin off his taxis. That's all right. Honestly, I didn't even think he was like gonna do what he did last night. I mean, I do betting like TikToks and YouTube shorts for the other 4for4 channel, which is whatever. Anyway, so one of my props for that game that night was Gadsden's over on his receiving yards, which he hit in like the second quarter. So I was kind of expecting, a good night, but I was like, what do you have, like 7 for 55 and a touchdown or something like that? And then Ladd had 7 or 8 for 68 and a touchdown. Something crazy. But Gadsden, I don't blame you if you didn't start him, and I don't blame you if you didn't take him out of your taxi squad. But now you can, and now you can play him every single week. And yeah, AJ Brown doesn't sound like he's going to play this week either, or at least it's been very ominous. I did get an alert about that saying that Josh Downs is going to officially play. Yeah, that Sirianni did not want to talk about AJ Brown's availability. So whatever. Hey, I just got as I'm scrolling through the notifications, Sir Brooks hits me up on Twitter messages. What's up, man? Appreciate you. I thank you for telling me because I wouldn't have known because I don't know the usernames and everything. So appreciate you as well. Burrito Master, thoughts on trading Tucker for Shaheed in light of trade rumors with Myers, Shaheed, or Olave? Also, Shaheed being a free agent after this season. I think personally, Olave stays. I think he's the probability seems to be on the side that he's going to get extended by the Saints and not traded. I do think Jacoby Myers has a better probability of getting traded than Olave, and I think Tucker maybe could be a better fantasy player for the rest of the year than Shaheed. Shaheed's also older, so I'd probably keep Trey Tucker over Shaheed. I don't mind either side if you have a preference for Shaheed, but I would probably keep Trey Tucker because I think there's better odds that Jacoby gets traded than Olave. And then from the dynasty side, with Shaheed being a free agent, but he's also older. Tucker might be decent for the rest of the year, especially without Myers. Seth has this roster going on, which looks pretty solid. Jalen Warren and Monty is your 3 and 4. You are in first. Nice. Should I try to improve in any areas? Looking at it, I think it's your wide receiver room that could use a little bit of help. With DK Keenan, Adams is pretty fine, but how can you improve? Autocorrect got you. I think that was supposed to be Oronde, but it's orange. How can you improve your wide receiver room to not only just be better for the remainder of the year, but then be more sustainable for the future? So like you got J.K. Dobbins, can you package him and DK Metcalf for a better wide receiver? Can you package him and Devontae Adams for a better wide receiver? Or Monty? I think Monty and J.K. are your two. They're not your most valuable and they're not your most productive, but they're right in the middle to where they're like the guys that could get you a decent amount in a return back compared to Warren. But their production isn't good enough that you're missing their production compared to Jacobs or Kyron. Kyron, maybe if you wanted to deal Kyron, you could try that too. Like if DK and Kyron got you Rashee Rice or somebody like that, or Garrett Wilson, I don't know. Maybe that is the tier of wide receiver that you're getting with Kyron is worth it compared to the tier of wide receiver that you would get with JK or Monty. But I mean, you're doing everything. You're in first place. Your team is great. Herbert, Love, Jacobs. The depth at running back is great. You've got CeeDee Lamb for sure, and DK Keenan and Adams are great. You've got Ferguson and Oronde. Maybe if you wanted to trade off of Ertz or Taylor to package them in a deal, maybe that gets you a better wide receiver as well, to then move off some of your tight end depth. I think that you have abilities to maybe just get better wide receivers for the rest of the year and for Dynasty, but I wouldn't be pressured into a move to do something because you're obviously have a very good team and you've built this well and you're in first place. So it's not to say that you desperately need to do something right now or that any of these players are just going to fall off the face of the earth that you need to immediately sell, but there could be optimization paths for you by moving off of either your tight end or running back depth or both and pairing that with DK Keenan or Adams to just get one individually better wide receiver. Just wanted to pop in and say I appreciate you. Was able to grab Gaz in every league because your content feels good when they hit. Thank you so much, man. It feels great when Oronde Gadsden is hitting for sure. Can we get Phil Maffa healthy? That would be like the last Exodia piece for me this year. Would be like, can I just get a healthy Phil Maffa who can make some noise in this Cowboys backfield? That would be, oh my gosh, I'd be on. It wouldn't even be cloud 9. It'd be like cloud 20. A healthy and productive Phil Maffa. Hit that like button, y'all. Thank you so much, Lex. Definitely hit that like button, guys. Would you trade Chase Brown and Adams for Amon-Ra St. Brown? Yes. If I did, it would give me Gibbs and St. Brown. I don't know if I like players on the same team. No, I would absolutely do that. And I'm not as concerned about having Gibbs and St. Brown. They're one of the few players that or player combinations where you have the running back and the wide receiver on the same team. That is actually still a pretty good thing. Let's see. So, I mean, the first example I can think of is what they both did last week. So last week, Amon-Ra had 14. This is standard. Hold on. Change into PPR. Amon-Ra had 20 and a half PPR fantasy points as a wide receiver 15 last week. And then, of course, we all know that Jahmyr Gibbs was the RB2 with 36 fantasy points. So, I mean, that was one game that I just thought of because it just happened the most recently. But Jahmyr Gibbs was the RB2 and Amon-Ra was the RB or wide receiver 15 on the week. There's another week here where Jahmyr Gibbs is the RB3. This is week 3. Jahmyr Gibbs is the RB3. Amon-Ra St. Brown was the wide receiver 7. So, when it works for both of them. And I don't think that there's going to be very many games where both of those guys are bad. Maybe there's, a more median amount of games where one of them is really good and one of them's not as good, but I would never be sad about starting both of them individually, and I will not be sad about starting both of them at the same time, especially when you can send Chase Brown and Devontae Adams. This is a massive win just in a vacuum to go get Amon-Ra St. Brown. So regardless of whether you have Jahmyr Gibbs or not, I would be doing this every single time. And then you can just start both lines. Eric, what's going on, man? We are 5-2, and our running back room is Scadaboo and Vidal with Hampton, Benson on AR. Nice. Derrick Henry is available for a second plus a young upside player. Would you buy or wait for Benson to get back? My initial gut reaction was to say just go ahead and buy it. I'd be curious on who the young upside player is. So like is the young upside player, is it Benson? Is it Scadaboo? Is it somebody lower than that? Cody said, I have Gibbs and St. Brown, and it is glorious. Yeah. just be happy to have both of them for sure. Thank you, Cody. But yeah, so back to, I gotta scroll all the way back up to find this. Back to Eric's question. I would just be curious on who the young upside player is that he would be willing to have to go. Jaden Higgins, that would work for me. I would send a second in Jaden Higgins. Yeah, if it's somebody more in that kind of a tier, as opposed to, he's like, I want Scadaboo in a second for Derrick Henry. You got him. I wouldn't do that. I would take Scadaboo over Derrick Henry in Dynasty. But yes, a player like a Jaden Higgins, a Trey Harris, a Bashal Tootin. I'm just thinking of like rookies that haven't really done anything right now. Any of those kind of players, I would do for sure. Let's see. Alec, Woody Marks. If it was, Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims, yeah, any of those kind of players, yeah, that range, yeah. I would do that then. I would buy Derrick Henry because then I do think Derrick Henry is going to have a really good rest of season because he's getting Lamar back. And I think a lot of his issues were because we've always known this, that Derrick Henry is not as good when his team doesn't win. That was the case in Tennessee. That's also been the case in Baltimore, and that we just didn't hit that as much last year because Baltimore won like 14 games, and then now this year they're 1-4. So because they're 1-4, Derrick Henry hasn't been all good. But a couple of those games were without Lamar, and so now I think I'm looking at the rest of the season schedule for Baltimore in terms of like winning games is pretty great. So they get Chicago, Miami, Minnesota. They still got to play Cincinnati twice. They play Pittsburgh. They play the Jets. And then they get, matchups against Cleveland and Green Bay, which are good run defenses in New England. But I think that buying Derrick Henry would be as good for you as it would be potentially also keep away from him trading Derrick Henry away to a different contender as well. And then you can just play the matchup game. Maybe Trey Benson isn't as good when he comes back. Maybe Amari Hampton, maybe, depending on when he's back, you don't maybe want him, but then Vidal is going to be dead whenever Hampton returns. So we'll have to see. So yeah, if it's some sort of a player like that, like a Jaden Higgins type, totally on board with buying Derrick Henry. Chasing Breaker says, I don't disagree on this roster with that record, but I really like Harris as a hold/buy going into next year. He really looks like he's reliable, just needs a wide receiver to move on. I do agree with this. Yes, and I do agree that, Trey Harris was more of a raw wide receiver prospect. Still had second round draft capital. It makes sense that he hasn't produced as of now because he's been playing behind Ladd and Quentin Johnston and Keenan Allen. Had the touchdown last night. He definitely seems like he has had super limited volume. And I would say out of all of the rookie wide receivers who have yet to do anything, I'm not counting Burden so much in that list, but like Harris versus Higgins versus Noel versus Kyle Williams. And I would rather have Harris, I think, than Alec Iomanner as well. That I do agree that I think Harris fits more of a super buy low and hold right now. So I don't know, Eric. I don't know if Eric has a Trey Harris, but that type of wide receiver or young upside player is definitely the player that I would package with a second to go get Derrick Henry, while also agreeing with you, chasing breakers, that I do think Trey Harris is a very solid stash as we head into 2026, especially because he hasn't done anything, which some people may or may not have known that was going to be the case, um, or thought that could have been a possibility coming into the season. So yes, fully agree with both of you. So I don't know if Eric probably doesn't have Trey Harris, but a player like that I think would be very good. All these Gazin folks working themselves up, and I'm one of them. Gazin and Puka's 5th round picks. Let's go. That 5th round juice, man. It's in there. And Tez Johnson was 30 draft picks away from getting on my McConkey list for my marker system. And because I set that filter at top 200 and he was like 230 or something like that as a 6th rounder. But if he was in that top 200, Tez Johnson would have made my McConkey list, and I was already in rookie drafts and picking him up off of waivers and stuff like that. And now it seems like he's in a good position to also produce. I don't know if he has the longevity because, Godwin's going to come back and Jalen McMillan's going to come back. So we'll see. But as for right now, it seems like Tez Johnson could be another player that was a late round dart throw that my marker system favored as well. Or I'll say could have favored. It favored it enough from his PFF metrics. And then he just wasn't able to be highlighted on that specific McConkey list because I set the filter for that at 200. Top 200 overall. Would you trade Dak and Rome for Lamar and Brees? No, I would keep Dak and Rome. I like Lamar over Dak, but it's not as much as I like Rome over Brees. So I would take Dak and Rome in this one. Nico and Kirk aren't practicing. Would you consider any Texans wide receivers over Alec Pierce this week? All are still on waivers as well. I don't really. So I would not play Hutchinson, and I am hesitant to play one of the rookies. I do think that they have really good opportunity this week. I just don't know if that actually translates into anything. Alec Pierce has at least shown good production with and without Josh Downs. Lamar had a full practice today. That's what John Harbaugh just said. I just got the alert. Lamar is a full practice. That is awesome. Let's see what Paulson says. What does Paulson say? I know he likes Jalen Noel as well. We had talked about him on the sneaky starts for this week, that he could be a player of interest. He is ranked as the wide receiver 41 in Paulson's half PPR rankings, and Alec Pierce is up at 31. So I think he would also say to play Alec Pierce, but and then Jaden Higgins is at 51. So it's essentially 31, 41, 51. So they're all 10 spots apart with Alec Pierce at the top and then Noel. I feel like I interchanged those two. I don't think I have an actual understanding on which one it actually is, on if it's Noel or Noel. I hear everybody say it differently, and I feel like I interchange them. I would probably play Alec Pierce still, because the Niners defense is a lot tougher than Tennessee's. And I just don't know if it works for Houston without Nico. It's barely worked with him. And I just don't know, this just might be like a really kind of gross situation. Not to say it's going to be like, oh, which Titan wide receiver am I playing without Calvin Ridley? I don't think it's that bad, but it's kind of just going to be, I'm going to be willing to be wrong by benching all of the Texans wide receivers, and I'll play Alec Pierce this week. Hall, Tez, Golden, Kittle, Shaheed, pick one for the flex. gross. Um, Not super gross. Let me pull up Paulson's flex rankings. For me, I've eliminated Tez and Shaheed, and I think I've eliminated Golden. I think Tedero McMillan is a better start than Golden at wide receiver, so I'm eliminated him. So I'm down to Hall, T Mac, Kittle. My lean is to Brees because of the Bengals defense. And maybe Tyrod checks it down to him more than Justin Fields does. And it's a running back. So his volume should be more predictable than T Mac and Kittle. Flex rankings for Paulson have Brees at flex 13. He's got where he's got Kittle at flex 57. Where did I miss Tet? And Tetero's flex 44. So he would have it as Brees, slight gap, T Mac, Kittle. And then Tez and Shaheed are behind Kittle. And Golden is behind T Mac, but ahead of Kittle. So his answer would be Brees as well. Flex 13 on the week. I think it's just because of that matchup and the workload. So I would play Brees Hall. Oh, how do we feel about Brees Hall? Will he get better? Maybe he gets traded. My fear with Brees Hall is, and I never know which side because I feel like we've run through this multiple times with multiple players of the past. He currently is in a situation where he's in a terrible offense, but he's getting all of the workload. And if he gets traded, he's going to go to a better offense. Just like statistically, there are just not teams that have worse offenses than the Jets. And if they do, they're probably just not going to trade for Brees Hall, which there's probably like one or two teams that have worse offenses than the Jets, if there are even any. So statistically, he's going to go to a better offense if he gets traded. But is he going to get the workload in that offense enough to where he's not just like in a kind of gross committee? And maybe that all evens out to where, or maybe it is a positive that when he goes to a better offense, better touchdown opportunities, more sustained drives, maybe he does have the ability to get closer to 75, 80% of his workload that he has now in the Jets by himself in a bad offense. And because it's a better offense, he scores better for fantasy. I don't know which way to lean on that one. Because like if he gets traded to, I've seen some people say he could get traded to Kansas City. If he gets traded to Kansas City, I think that is a gross committee where I don't know if he's going to be the pass catcher because of their love for Brashard Smith right now. I don't know how much two down work he gets because Pacheco and Kareem Hunt have split for the vast majority of the games that they've played together. So would Pacheco and Brees Hall split? It would be a better offense, absolutely. But I just don't know what would happen there. I've seen some people throw out the Chargers, which I think is fine until Amari and Hampton comes back. But then Amari and Hampton comes back, then what's the split? And then you're in the fantasy playoffs at that point. I've seen the Bears, which again could be fine, but is he the pass catcher over DeAndre Swift? Is he the two down back over Swift or the goal line back over Monangai? I don't know where he fits in right there. And then after that, I just don't know where else he would go. Pittsburgh, I don't know if they're in the market to trade for Brees Hall, but like that could be a situation where, yeah, I could see that there's somewhat of a team need. Maybe there's opportunity there if they were to give him the workload over Jalen Warren, and maybe he's not like the pass catcher, but maybe he takes on more of the Najee Harris role that we thought Caleb was going to get, that Warren is kind of getting right now, but he probably doesn't get the receiving work over Warren or Gainwell. So that's all the conundrum in my head going on with what am I doing with Brees Hall if he does get traded or if he stays with the Jets. And I think my answer for both of them is I just don't want Brees Hall. I think he's valuable enough of a running back to where he is movable, especially on the suspicion of him getting traded. That is causing at least a little bit of interest with some people that maybe he gets traded to a better situation. Uh, so I just don't think with where his value is right now and my uncertainty about where he goes, what his volume looks like, or my uncertainty of him staying in the Jets, which would also be bad, that I probably just don't want Brees Hall. Um, and then yeah, and then you can reevaluate if you hold on to him, we can reevaluate in the offseason because he's probably going to sign somewhere else. But I think just given where he's at right now, value wise for dynasty, I just don't want Brees Hall. I think the Cardinals might end up taking a quarterback in this draft and have him sit a season or two or have a quarterback battle. IDK is hard, but I don't see us able to trade Kyler. Yeah, I think if we ride with Kyler, we won't be bad enough to get a higher pick more than likely than what we will get this year. I do think this is part of the conundrum with which I'm assuming that we were talking about Marv at this point. Part of the conundrum here with Marv and why I'm saying I think Kyler is good enough for Marv to get him a fantasy wide receiver one ceiling in a better offensive system. That's why I think the offensive system needs to be the first thing that goes. Because I also just don't think, as Evan, because you're a Cardinals fan, you seem to be agreeing that it just seems improbable for them to be able to move on from Kyler Murray. So they might just have to ride him out for a year or two unless they do draft a quarterback and they hit on that quarterback. And then it just becomes well, we can't bench this better rookie in favor of Kyler Murray right now. Kind of like a Jackson Dart situation. Or like maybe like a Brock Purdy situation over Trey Lance. Like the rookie is just better, They just is a better quarterback at a Penix over Kirk Cousins situation. That might be where we're at. But I still think that Kyler is good enough for Marv right now. They just it's the system. The system and the coaching staff god awful. Holy crap, there are a lot of questions. So let's run through these quickly. 12-man PBR. Whoa. Drake May, Judkins, and Kamara for McCaffrey and Daniel Jones or Jaden Daniels. Or Allen Judkins, Charbonnet Kamara for McCaffrey, Daniels, or Daniel Jones and Travion. Oh boy. Is this dynasty or redraft? Lucas, I have a bunch of questions. I think if this is dynasty, I would probably keep Drake May and Judkins, especially over McCaffrey and Daniel Jones. If this is dynasty, I would probably take the Josh Allen and Judkins side. If this is redraft, I would keep Drake May and Judkins, and then I would do McCaffrey and Daniels if it was redraft. But dynasty is the Judkins side for all of this. Yeah, I think that's where we're at. First time joining the stream, welcome in, William. Currently sitting 7th in my 12-team Superflex PPR. Current value right now is Mahomes, Bowers, Tat, Brees, Addison. Yep. Should I shoot for a true wide receiver one? This is where I think Brees Hall is sellable. I think Worthy's sellable. I think Addison is sellable if you are upgrading. So yes, I think if you could package some sort of Brees and Worthy or Brees and Addison, my preference would be Brees and Worthy. Then I would probably try to see if you can get another player like Rice or Abuka or somebody in that range, essentially. Lad plus. That's how I would probably go about it. Because I see Brees as a pretty solid sell right now. I think Worthy's been a sell for quite some time. And then you can keep Addison as your wide receiver 3. I'm fine with that. And just trying to see if you can go get a wide receiver, a better wide receiver 1 for sure. Start Lamar every game that he's active in. That's easy. Yep. That was a comment from way earlier. Dart or Mariota for my super flex this week. I would go with Jackson Dart against the Eagles. I mean, we already saw it. Mariota against the Chiefs. I'm not sure how I feel about that. He might get McLaurin and Debo back, but I think I would play Jackson Dart. Let's take a look at Paulson's rankings. He's got Jackson Dart QB 13, Mariota QB 16. So he would agree. And they're separated by over 1 fantasy point. So he would play Jackson Dart as well. Shout out for Dowdle Chuba Debo to get Kyron McLaurin instead. I'm on board with that. Yeah, I think I'd rather do that than also get Pearsall than you would have Pearsall and Jennings and Kittle. So I'm on board with that. Is Ferguson or Kraft a sell even if I can't get a first for either? No, I don't think so. Even with you rebuilding, I think maybe if you could like package something, like if it's like Ferguson and one of those young dart throws that we were just kind of talking about to get a first, I'd be on board with that. But I don't think all of these guys are necessarily sells if you're not getting a first, or you're not getting a player of value of a first round pick, you know. So I'm especially Kraft. Like I'm more than comfortable keeping Kraft on a rebuilding team. I'm fine keeping Ferguson for the most part as well because I do think he should be worth closer to a first round pick and a half tight end premium. To where maybe you do have to add something like a kicker into not like an actual kicker, but like a kicker into the deal with Ferguson to get the first. If it's another kind of win now piece that you have or an extra pick or something like that, I'd be willing to do that with Ferguson to go get a first. But I think Kraft, I'm more comfortable holding if you're not getting a first round pick. But if you have to do the same thing, Kraft and some sort of a kicker piece added in for a first, you could do that too. Where am I? Chasing Breakers 10 by 10 Superflex. I'm 6-1, was a fraction of a point from being undefeated. Hate when that happens. And starting to think about how to push my chips in. Biggest weakness is RB2. Do I push for CMC, Judkins, or Jacobs? Great question. And this is one of those situations where I think it definitely comes down to price for CMC, Judkins, or Jacobs, but you also have to look at your team and say you're 6-1 right now, almost 7-0. Do you need a running back of that? Do you need to pay for a running back of that caliber to push your chips in? Because I would say your chips are already pretty much in. And you know, it depends on the price for CMC, Judkins, or Jacobs. Like if you could pay a first for any of them, you know, that's fine. Like I would pay a first for Judkins, absolutely. And I would pay a first for Jacobs, and I would consider paying a first for Christian McCaffrey right now because he's just that dude. To where, you know, yeah, sure. But if you're like paying anything drastically more than that, it just might not be worth it. To where if you're depending on who your RB2 is, which I don't know, you know, you could just maybe go and just buy Jalen Warren, just go buy Chase Brown. Like your team is that good right now to where you're that close to being undefeated that you probably just don't need a player of that high caliber on your team to win the championship this year. And then there's also that point to where it would probably be best for you to wait a little bit and see, is Christian McCaffrey still healthy? Is Judkins healthy? Is Jacobs healthy? Understanding the layout of the running back position, understanding the layout of the NFL, just waiting as long as possible to then have as much information as possible before actually making a deal for the running back position that could, you know, end like that. And it's just so volatile and not as valuable in a dynasty perspective. So it depends on price for sure. But it also is a thing where I wonder if you could win the championship without that high of a caliber of a running back, paying for that high of a caliber running back. Of course, I would love any of these guys on my roster, but paying for them is a different question, I think. Connor in a best ball rebuild, guy who's really bad, so the inactive is out tanking me. Right now, he has 873 points, and you have 10,000. 10,000. 1,000. Penix, Burrow, 0 running backs. Do we tear it down further? I don't think you can. Because, like, I wouldn't want to sell just in the name of out tanking somebody else for the 101 next year. I wouldn't want to sell Rice or Ibuka. Um, I mean, maybe you pivot off of Troy Franklin, try to see if you can get a couple of thirds or maybe even a late second for Troy Franklin, or if it was Fant and Franklin or, anything like that. Like you could maybe piecemeal off of these lower level guys. But I probably wouldn't be touching your wide receivers at this point just to get the 101 if you're already kind of locked into the 102. And you're up by almost 200 points. Like that's a lot to make up in half of the season, essentially. So you might just kind of be locked into the 102, regardless of even if you were to move off of some of your bigger name guys. Because Rice, I mean, we still have a bye week for Rice coming up. I think we still have a bye week for Ibuka. Do we? I think maybe. So those are 2 weeks that, they're not going to score. So that maybe some of his players have already had bye weeks on top of being bad. To where maybe you make up a little bit of ground there anyway. But yeah, I mean, if you want to trade off of Trey Franklin, I'm fine with that. But other than that, I think you've done pretty much all you can, and you're just kind of waiting at this point. Cody 7-0 in his 14-team PPR. One quarterback won the ship last year. Congratulations. Was offered Olave, Diggs, and a first and second, and a third for Garrett Wilson and Trey Benson. Now, I was already on the fence about this for Garrett Wilson, but then you add Trey Benson in there. I will keep Garrett Wilson and Trey Benson. I highlighted Garrett Wilson as a redraft buy. So he has a really good rest of season schedule. I think Tyrod Taylor's a better quarterback for him than Justin Fields. So if they stick with Tyrod for the remainder of the year, I think that's good for Garrett Wilson. Obviously, he's not going to play this week. He's on a bye next week. But I would rather have Garrett Wilson both from a dynasty standpoint and a rest of season standpoint than the combination of Olave and Diggs. I don't think this is a bad deal, but I think I would just rather have Garrett Wilson and Trey Benson. Kevin, hey, Addison, am I a contender or pretender? No first. What is your been a long time viewer? Love the Friday AMAs, man. Thank you. Thank you. What is your record? I'd be interested to see what your record is. Knicks, Love, T-Law, Purdy, Puka, London, Marv. I lean. 4-3. I figured it was somewhere in the middle. I lean pretender, but that is only because Puka is hurt. Marv is not great. You're going to lose Rashad White here soon. I don't know if the Henderson breakout is going to happen. Benson, you get back here in probably 3 weeks because they have a bye this week. I think he's out then in week 9. So then you get him back in week 10. Judy's not good, or at least his offense isn't good. So that's why I lean like that you are a pretender this year. Not to say that you can't still make the playoffs and then make a run. Frisky pretender that's a really good way of putting it. Frisky pretender, not enough depth or consistent firepower, very week to week. I like that phrasing, chasing breakers, frisky pretender. That is, I think, a perfect way to describe it, to where on any given week, when all of your guys are healthy and not on bye, like a starting lineup of, Love and Bo Nix, Puka, London, Marv, Judkins, we'll say Benson, and then Tyler Warren. Like that's probably a top 4 lineup in your league. And it's going to be hard to beat for most teams. And on any given week, you can be a top scorer. But just because the depth isn't there at this moment, because Henderson's not doing anything, Benson's hurt, you're going to lose Rashad White whenever Bucky comes back. Puka's currently hurt. Judy's not a great fill-in. Purdy's currently hurt. Your quarterbacks are kind of weird on a weekly basis. Um, that's where I lean pretender. And again, not to say that you can't make the playoffs this year and then still make a Cinderella run, uh, or that you can't be a contender next year. I think this is built very well for the future. You just kind of got to optimize it. I like Chasing Breaker's idea of moving off of one of those quarterbacks because you have three that all feel nearly identical to each other. Um, I should say, you have four that feel all nearly identical to each other. Um, so how can we maybe upgrade one of them, sell one of them for somebody else, maybe a better running back, a better wide receiver upgrade. Um, that would be what I'm looking at. You can use Kraft, Hawkinson, sell Rashad White while he's doing something right now. Um, upgrade off of Marv, and one of the quarterbacks for like a major upgrade at one of the positions. Um, that's what I would probably be looking at, to where maybe then you still don't have the depth like you have right now, but at least you have maybe either more firepower to then go try to win it this year and then take it in next year and see what happens. Or you could try to incorporate some more depth into your team to then see what happens as we go into the fantasy playoffs, if you make the playoffs, but then also heading into 2026. It needs to be dynasty oriented. Like, I am acting as if I'm competing in 2026 and not in 2025. But if I win in 2025, or I am competitive in 2025 for the remainder of the year, that's great. So that's where I think you can optimize yourself for the future while still trying to be able to win now. By probably moving / upgrading your quarterbacks, or upgrading Marv or anything like that. So that's where I would go. I was just talking about that inactive guy out taking me. He threw Hawkins Sutton on the block. GG's 102 it is. So yeah, you're it's probably the 1.02, which means that you're not going to get Jeremiah Love, but you can probably get Jordan Tyson. Or if you don't get Jordan Tyson, then you get Jeremiah Love. You get one of the two. So that's that both those picks are going to be really good regardless. Where did I leave off? Kevin, we just answered this. So yeah, I saw you said thanks. Have a good weekend. Yeah, have a good weekend to you, man. Glad I could help. So hopefully you're able to make some. If you have any questions about moves or anything like that too, while you're wheeling and dealing over the next couple of weeks, definitely let me know. I'd be very curious to see what you do with that team. Yeah, we need some film off them. Yep, this was funny. I laughed. Sent Genty Marks in a late third for Gibbs yesterday as a contender. Good move. Yeah, I would say it's not bad. I probably would have kept Genty and Marks, but I also can't be mad about having Jahmyr Gibbs either. I don't view much difference between Genty and Gibbs. To where then, if anything were to happen to Nick Chubb, or if Woody Marks were to just kind of continue taking over that backfield, that's probably because I don't see much of a difference between Gibbs and Genty. I probably would have just held on to Marks. What do you do with Judy? Seems like I can't sell him for anything and nobody wants him. Do you think he can bounce back to being somewhat valuable? No, not really. I would probably just trade him off my team for like a third. That's probably what I would do. If anybody's willing to give you a third, or if you're able to just throw him into a deal to get something, Judy's just a player that he just doesn't belong on my team, essentially. And he's a dead asset. You could do so many better things with that roster spot than a Jerry Judy right now. Mustang, did I miss? Oh, trying to unload vets off the roster, currently trending to own 101 on purpose. How do I go about trying to sell guys so far, only getting seconds or loan ball offers? Any thoughts? Well, I would tell you, or maybe I reload to compete this year. Don't know how to go about this team. Uh, I would. What players are you getting offered for seconds? So I would sell DJ Moore for a second. I'd sell Ayuk for a second. I would sell Strange for a second. I would sell Tua for a second. Um, I probably wouldn't sell Kyler for a second, but man, um, Lamar, Neighbors, Hampton, Kittle, and Gadsden and Torrey Horton, Trey Harris. Those guys can. Strange can even stay too. Uh, but I also think getting seconds. Oop, drop my ring. Getting seconds for most of these guys is probably more of a beneficial thing than anything. Um, this, I mean, I feel a sneeze coming on. Is it going to happen? Oh, that's like the worst. There are, there is the counter argument to where if these guys aren't doing anything for you, right? So like Ayuk isn't currently playing, so he's not hurting you in terms of adding points to your roster uh to tank. So you could hold on to him to see if he has a value spike when he does return to playing. DJ Moore's not hurting you because even though he is playing, he's not producing. But does he get traded to a better situation, and maybe his value rises from that? It's okay to hold on to him from there too. Um, T. Higgins might be one of the players that you could move because he is producing right now. Um, so if a contender is willing to pay for him, I would want more than just a second, especially a contender second. But if it was like multiple seconds or a second and another really good piece, like a Trey Harris type of player, I could move T. Higgins for that. Same with George Kittle. Um, so there are arguments to where like some of these guys are really good to move off of, but then some of these guys, those same guys could be players that you could hold on to in the hopes of value spikes from their situations improving. I don't know what the probabilities are for that, but it would have to be something kind of drastic to change. Um, and then I would probably keep Lamar, Hampton, Neighbors for sure, Gadsden for sure, and then rebuild around that core, and then just try to see if you can move off some of this age either now for just seconds, or if you wanted to make the bet on them improving in different situations, you could do that too. Um, the most likely answer though is that half of these players should not, or half these players probably won't and probably shouldn't be on your team in like 5 months from now is probably where we're at. Even for lesser picks, because then you could try to do something. You could hit on rookies or package those for firsts. Like if you get a second for DJ Moore and a second for Ayuk, and then you can package both those seconds and then you just get one first. Um, I don't know if that's possible, but it could be possible to where maybe then you hit on that rookie and then that rookie's great. Where can I overpay to consolidate? I think I said I wasn't going to do any more of these kind of moves to make comments, and then here I am doing all these moves to make comments. Um, so I would consolidate Jameson Williams, Devontae Adams, Debo Samuel. That's the group that I would consolidate. If you need to use Benson to do that, or you can just consolidate the wide receivers, I'm totally fine with doing that. But I think you can include Waddle in there maybe too if it gets you a decent wide receiver or a different tier of wide receivers. Waddle, JMO, Adams, Debo, all of those guys are in play of consolidation to do 2-for-1s to get better wide receivers. I would start Golden over Dallas Goedert this week. I bet you Paulson agrees with that. Golden is flex 50. Goddard is flex 65. So yeah, Paulson would say Matthew Golden. He was on his sneaky starts. He was one of Paulson's sneaky starts this week was Golden too. So against the Steelers offense, maybe he gets his first touchdown this week. I don't mind it. I answered this question already, William. Yeah, I think I did, right? Am I crazy? I did. Okay. I'm not crazy. Uh, no offense is worse than the Jets. This is true. If Brees goes to Kansas City, I think his value would definitely shoot up. His value would absolutely go up to where then maybe you could trade him for more than what you can trade him for right now. But I'm worried that would be like a trade him before we see him actually on the field. Like it would be like an Amari Cooper to Buffalo situation. Not to say that he would be dusted like Amari was last year, but I fear for the production to where I would probably want to sell him on his inflated value before we see the production. Trade Rice and Achan for Waddle, Olave, Pickens, and Chase Brown. I would keep Rice and Achan. I would. That's way too much of a headache on a weekly basis from a start sit decision to where I would rather just have the two better players in Rice and Achan. Would you rather have Pickens or McBride rest of season? Probably McBride, just for the tight end um, positional advantage. It's pretty close though. I think Pickens has a higher ceiling, but with CeeDee Lamb probably back, I think I would rather have Trey McBride for the positional advantage. Ryan finally made it to a live one. Good to be back, Addison. Hey, good to see you back here, Ryan. Glad you can make it in here. Connor Moore, Dak Prescott trade questions for my dynasty squad. Which side for a reload? Dak, Harvey, and a third, or Goff and a first? I would take Dak and Harvey on here. Harvey and a first is pretty close. If it's the 4th through the 8th pick, that makes me lean towards the pick, but I'd much rather have Dak than Goff. So, and you have an extra third, which we have seen extra thirds could lead to potentially Oronde Gadsden type players. So, so we shouldn't dismiss them completely when we can have that upside. I would rather have Dak and RJ Harvey on this team or on my team in a reload as well. Where do you think Brees signs in the offseason? That is a great question. Low key, I could see Arizona. I could see, I mentioned Pittsburgh kind of already. I could see like a Miami Dolphins if they have a new coaching staff comes in and they don't want to run with Achan like that. Um, I could see Tennessee. I could see Houston. Um, what was Javante's contract? I could see Carolina as well. Because Rico's Javante signed only a 1-year deal. So depending on that situation, maybe they just try to do it again, going from Rico to Javante, then Javante to Brees. I don't know. There's a few suitors out there, but I just don't know what his market is actually going to look like from a pricing standpoint. And it might just be a situation to where he goes to another bad team because they're willing to pay him a little bit more than going to a better team for less money. So it's hard to do the prediction game with free agents because it always seems like there's like it just takes one team to be like, yeah, we just need to go get this guy, and you're like, why do you need that guy? And then it just completely changes everything. I'm holding on to Nico Collins. I think it's going to be difficult to trade off of him to try, and I would only be wanting to upgrade really, or if it was like a side grade over to Rashee Rice or somebody like that. But like, I don't want to go from Nico to like a T Higgins or Nico to like Jordan Addison or anything like any of those kind of wide receivers. I would want to go up uh to JSN or Lamb or Amon Ra or J or not or Puka for a buy low. Or you can move to London, you can move to Rice, or you can move to Abuka. That's what I would rather be doing with Nico. But more often than not, I'm probably just holding Nico because he's still their top target. He just hasn't. It just unfortunately has not been working because it's just that offense is so stale. Again, I don't know how it got worse by firing their offensive coordinator, but it got worse. And so it's so annoying. But they're another like offense like the Cardinals to where it can work in certain games, but more often than not, it's just not because the system is so bad. They need a different person. I would probably hold on to Henderson over a 26 first, especially if it was a late first. If it was much more of an earlier first, I'd probably be willing to trade Henderson. Um, but if you look at where Henderson is probably going to rank, if he were to come out next year, like you compare him as a prospect versus 2026 prospects, he would be behind Jeremiah Love. I probably would have Justice Haynes over Travion Henderson, and maybe CJ Baxter as well. I don't even know if they're both declaring. But if they do declare, I'd probably have both those guys over Travion. So he'd be like the RB3 or 4, which in next year's class is probably like a top 7 pick. So unless you're getting that, and again, I'm saying maybe I would take Haynes or Baxter, and I'm even saying maybe they declare. I'm not even sure if they do. Haynes, I think, should declare. Baxter, I'm not sure will. Um, so that's where I lean towards. I would rather probably just have Travion Henderson. Um, so yeah, especially over like a late first. I would keep Booty over Jalen Noel, whichever one the pronunciation is. I would keep Booty. Uh, do, 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 do. Chasing Breakers. Um I need a reminder for what the question was for this one. Because I feel like I was talking about it, and then just with the way that the comments go, I can come back to this if you remind me what the question was. Trade for RB2. Thank you. So yeah, so you have Benson coming back. You have can you trade Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt? Maybe this is more of an optimizing thing, to where I like keeping Henderson, but can you move Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt and then one of your like JCM and Josh Downs equals what at running back? Does that equal DeAndre Swift? Does that equal? I mean, I would pay that for Brees Hall. Does that equal? Mm, Scadaboo? Kyron? Eh. That's what I would be. I'd be curious on how maybe you just can upgrade off of Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. Because at least I mean Vidal was phenomenal for you last night. So you've bought some time with Vidal, and then whenever Benson comes back, you've got that too. And I mean you've got Chase, you got Puka coming back soon, London and Odunze, May and Herbert. You got Gadsden. I mean this is a great team. That yeah, it's not going to take much for that RB2 spot. Maybe it is something like maybe instead of paying like up for the Jacobs, CMC, Judkins kind of player, maybe you could pay up for them, but then you could use Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt in that equation, and then maybe you don't have to pay as much in draft picks to do that. I think you have options here. I definitely think you have options for what you can do. Um, it would just be trying to find the right person to do that with. Maybe that's another fringe guy who might need another running back, and then maybe you can move JCM to them. Maybe you can move JCM to more of a rebuilder who could be interested in what he could do because he's a rookie and add some hype. I think that's where I would go and try to attack it. Move off of JCM and try to find a way to get to a better running back off of that. What would it take to tear down from London to Judkins? Probably an early second. That's for me to sell. I don't know if the Judkins manager would do that to go from Judkins in an early second over to London. Maybe they would. Um, but it would have to be like an early second for me. or someone in that kind of range. Another wide receiver, maybe like let's pull up the list because I'm not good at remembering player names on the spot in certain ranges. Ricky Pearsall. I feel like I'm always going for Pearsall. Uh, Cortland Sutton, somebody like that. Zay Flowers, maybe like a Michael Pittman type of receiver that they kind of ride the gap of like I could pay a first for them, but I don't really want to pay first for them. But somewhere in there, I think is where I would want to sell London for Judkins because I'm that much into it. You know, I like wide receivers a lot, so that's kind of where I'm at. 14 team PPR thoughts. Recently added McBride of trading away Pickens. Nice. Oh, so you did trade away Pickens for McBride. Nice. Um, in a 14 team league, I think this is a pretty solid team. I mean, London Rice, and you got McBride, who's going to be a positional advantage over a lot of different players. Maybe Jaden Reed can produce whenever he comes back here in a few weeks. Achan Dobbins is a good wide receiver or running back too. Stevenson seems to be like a solid running back, top 25 guy. Caleb in a 14 team, that's probably pretty solid. And then you got Trevor. I like this. I can see why you're 4-3, but I also see the upside of how you can compete and finish out this season. I think it's a very solid team in a 14 team league. And my only questions would be like, can you just get one more wide receiver in that London Rice range? Which Pickens was not that, but like, just I'm wondering. I don't know what draft picks you have or anything like that. That's what I would be looking at. Do you think Hunter could be the wide receiver one in Jacksonville? I do. They put so much draft capital and have shown flashes to be the go-to guy for them. I do think that Travis Hunter has the upside still for sure to be the wide receiver one over Brian Thomas Jr. I think they both could be technically wide receiver ones. I feel like that possibility isn't discussed enough that they're just both so good. Not like a Chase Higgins or a Jefferson Addison situation or an AJ Brown Devonta Smith situation, but like they're just both so good. Every single week. I don't think that possibility is still out there, I think, and I don't think it's talked about enough. But I do definitely still see the upside of Travis Hunter being the wide receiver one in Jacksonville. And if it takes a Brian Thomas Jr. injury like what we have right now to kind of push them into that, I do agree with the draft capital and his talent that he could definitely do it for sure. Sit one for Connor, Allen, Lamar, Mahomes. Oh my gosh. I would sit. Jeez. Um, that is so. Mahomes is Paulson's quarterback one, Allen is QB two, Lamar is QB three. So I guess Paulson's answer would be sit Lamar Jackson, which maybe that's a smarter thing because he's coming off of the injury, so maybe he's a little limited in the first week back. I feel like you got to play Mahomes against Washington's defense, and then it's just Josh Allen. I mean, it's Lamar Jackson too, but I would probably sit Lamar for this week because of the injury. I don't think you have a wrong answer, though. That's incredible. Yes, I would trade Booty for a third. Pretty easy there. Just move off of that, get some extra draft capital. I declined this, but I wanted a gut check. Dart, Daniel Jones, Gainwell, Brashard Smith, get T Law, JJ McCarthy, Noel, and it's first. So I would take Dart over either quarterback for sure. And Noel, we can throw that in there. I would take. I'm on board with it. It's really not a bad offer. But yeah, I think the upside of Jackson Dart, and then you have Daniel Jones, who's basically the same as Trevor Lawrence at this point, maybe better. That the first being in there is nice. But I think the upside of Jackson Dart outweighs that whole other side. So yeah, I like it. I'd keep Jackson Dart too. Um, Fannin or Monangai at the flex. I'd play Fannin this week. Um, yeah, yeah, I'd play Fannin. And oop, if we were to cross reference, Paulson has Fannin as the flex 83. He's got Monangai with an A. I always spell Mono, and it's Mona. Monangai is at flex 130, so he would definitely say Fannin too. Would you move Nico for Hampton? Someone just bought Stroud last week, so they might try to buy low there. They have Hunter, London, Olave, and Ibuka. I would probably take Hampton. That's probably a fine enough. I usually like my wide receiver over running back, but if Nico's going to fall a little bit and Hampton's going to come back and be great, I'd probably take Hampton there. Yeah, I think I would. I wouldn't add anything really substantial to do this though. If it's straight, it's fine. Or if it's like Nico in a fourth for Hampton, that's fine. But if it's like anything kind of more than that, I probably would just keep Nico. No, I would keep my fourth round pick. I mean, Trey Benson's going to come back in week 10, so you're not getting him. They're on a bye this week. And then, I mean, they get the Cowboys defense in week 9. So you're paying a fourth round pick for 1 week. I think I'd rather have the fourth than Bam Knight. And he's not even a guarantee to be good against the Cowboys defense. Just ask Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. So you're paying a fourth for 1 week of Bam Knight that we're not even sure what the production is going to be. I'd probably just keep the fourth. I would take a 27 first over Pittman and Wandale. I like that. I like that for sure. No, this is definitely not the case. Uh, I think Nico is far better than Jalen Noel for sure. Jacobs Addins in the late first for Bijan and Judy. I'd probably take Jacobs in the first. I'm not in the game of trying to upgrade off of my already great running backs for better running backs. Judy, I care nothing about. So I would take the fact that you're adding Adams and a late first to Jacobs just to move up to Bijan. I would rather have Jacobs in this. Would you trade JSN for Dart Waddle in a late first in a Superflex Dynasty? Oh my gosh. Probably. Probably. I think just because it's Waddle and a first, I would take JSN over Dart and one of those pieces, maybe. Dart and a first, I think, is iffy on if I would keep JSN or not. But I would probably, because it's Dart, Waddle, and a first, I think I would take JSN. I'm not big into being on the 3 side of a 3-for-1 deal, but I think that's just too much. So I would probably take. Man, that's difficult. JSN's so good, man. He's so good. Dynasty win now. Would you move Bucky for CMC? Nah, I would hold on to Bucky. Kind of for the similar situation as for this one, where I'm just like, I'm not really the type of guy to just move my really good running back for a better running back just because Bucky's currently hurt, but that's not to say that CMC won't be hurt at some point. So I would probably just keep Bucky Irving. Better dynasty asset, I think, too, for more of the long term. I think that Hampton is just going to go right back into being the main RB1 workhorse for Vidal. Over Vidal. I don't think Vidal eats into Hampton's workload really at all to a significant degree. So I think I think it's just nice having this Vidal production is nice, but I think that Hampton is just way better. I don't think that the Chargers disagree with me on that. I mean, they knew what they had that Vidal was this great player. I think he wouldn't have been on the practice squad. So, and yeah, Ryan Vidal got cut in August. So he was on the practice squad. He wasn't even Haskins was the backup behind Hampton, well, behind Najee. So, I think that if they truly wanted Vidal to be involved after Najee's injury with Amari and Hampton, they would have called him up from the practice squad while Hampton was healthy and not after. So maybe you get like a game or two where Hampton's like first coming back and he still splits reps a little bit, kind of like how Jalen Warren split reps in his first week back with Kenneth Gainwell, but then Warren took over in a massive way the next week. So you might get a game where they're more 50-50 or 60-40, but then after that, it's going to be, I think it's just Hampton. Daniel's got a redraft team, 12 teams, start 9, 5, and 2. Nice hero running back strategy. Can start 1 running back and 4 wide receivers. Hampton is down, loaded at wide receiver. Would you trade London or Nico for a running back or ride this out to week 12? Is Hampton coming back in week 12? Is that the actual timeline? Update slightly dampens Chargers mood. He's still in a walking boot. Oh my gosh. I would probably, if you're that loaded at wide receiver, yeah, if you can move off of London or Nico and move over to get like Judkins or let's take a look. What does our trade evaluator say? If you could can you get like James Cook or Achan or Jacobs or somebody like that? Like if you could do that, I feel like that would be a pretty solid deal. But if you're like, I can trade Nico or London and get Scadaboo, I probably would just hold with the wide receiver. It's close though. It's close for sure. But I think you need to have a decent upper echelon type of running back to move off of London or Nico, I think, especially whenever you can start 4 wide receivers a week. So I would say it depends. I would say yes, but it depends on who. Connor's a 10x10 defending champ contender. If I can get JSN for T and 2 firsts, I would do that. Still have extra early one. Elite wide receivers are hella expensive in this league. I would pay T and 2 firsts for Jackson Smith and Jigba. Go get JSN and then run it back. Tempted to go throw some buy low trades at Hampton owners trying to compete. I think you could do it for sure. Because week 12, I mean, that still gives him another month, right? So another month to get back. But man, it's just, if he's still in a walking boot right now, I mean, I have no idea how that really impacts his return. But it just doesn't sound good. Let's see. Maybe I can people are arguing on Twitter about who was first to like Oronde Gadsden. Somebody said, I still think that I would never claim that I was the first person on Oronde Gadsden. I will claim I was one of the loudest, but I will never claim that I was the first. Somebody said that they're like, I think you were the first one that on Gadsden, and somebody else is like, he was not the first. It was this guy, and blah 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 blah. Whatever. I'm never gonna argue with anybody about who was first on who. But I will definitely admit I was one of the loudest on Oronde Gadsden. I will argue that one. What was I looking up? Amari and Hampton. I wonder if my boy Jeff Mueller, Amari and Hampton, thoughts if anyone's interested. Being in a walking boot 3 weeks post-injury makes me 99% sure there's a fracture involved. Could be surgical or non-surgical. Either way, if this is accurate, we will not see him again until week 13 or later. That is what Jeff Mueller, who is a physical therapist, he's an injury analyst for Destination Devi, DLF 444, and bets, the Bestbirds umbrella of DLF and 444, but he's also an injury guy for Destination Devi. He's a very trusted source for me on these, on injuries for sure. So if he's saying that this is what it's looking like with Hampton in a walking boot 3 weeks post injury, and then we won't see him again until at least week 13 or later, that is a ways away. So you might get some good buy low possibilities with Hampton. Especially if that news kind of gets out that, we still have like 5 or 6 weeks before he's back. And then you're talking about, ooh, do we want to play him in the playoffs on his first weeks back from like a broken foot, essentially? You could get some solid buy low offers for Amari and Hampton, I think, that could potentially get done. So I give it a shot, chasing breakers. Jess declined to name a starting quarterback and shut down all quarterback related questions. What a farce. It's Tyrod Taylor, right? It's got to be Tyrod. Half PBR, who do you prefer in order? Downs, Pierce, Mims, Noel, Reynolds. Reynolds is last. Can I throw him off of this list? I mean, he could be fine, but I don't want him. So my personal order, I think, would go Downs, Pierce, Mims. I think this is the order. I think that's actually the order. Am I tripping just because this is the order that you gave it to me? But what does Paulson say? So half PPR. Does he have Downs in here though? I don't know if he does. He does have Downs. He's got Downs lower. So Paulson's order would go Pierce. Where's Mims? Okay, so it would go Pierce, Noel, Mims, Reynolds, Downs. That's where Paulson would go. I feel like I'd have Josh Downs higher. If he's cleared off of concussion protocol, I mean, it is the argument against Josh Downs is that they're playing Tennessee. So in games where the Titans don't really win, he's probably not going to be heavily involved. So I understand it from that standpoint. To where maybe then you also want to fade out Pierce. If you want to play Marvin Mims, I don't think that's a bad call because they're probably going to be throwing more and they play Dallas. If you want to play Noel, I don't think that's necessarily a bad call either. I'm not helping you at all. Paulson's rankings say Pierce, Noel, Mims, Reynolds, Downs. That's what Paulson says. And I explained a lot earlier about why I really trust on Paulson. So I think I'll just leave it at that one. Half PPR, pick a flex between Harvey, Davis, Mims, and Hollywood. I'd probably play Mims here. I don't think Mims is ready for flex consideration yet. Did I say Mims? Davis. I don't think Davis is ready for flex consideration yet. Harvey is fine, but it's nothing like tremendous for me. He's probably Marquise in here. No, he's Hollywood. So all those three were So Paulson would say Mims of this group. Mims is at flex 94, and everybody else is in the hundreds. So Paulson would say Mims, and that's where I was kind of leaning on this one too. I think it's just a little bit more of a workload confidence, especially with Rice back versus Hollywood, and Brees is still there, and Dobbins is still there over Harvey. So, Mims for that one. The only reason I know about Gadsden is because of Addy. I would definitely say that while I may not have been the first person in the fantasy and dynasty community to have talked about Oronde Gadsden as a major sleeper this year, I bet you I could have definitely been the first person that people have heard Oronde Gadsden's names from in the community. So there's definitely that. I won't say I was the first, but definitely I think I've helped a lot of people by being the first person that they have heard Oronde Gadsden's name from. So I'm taking a lot of credit for it, man. But no, I'll never say I was like the first. The first is whoever. Brian Drake, there's another fantasy and dynasty analyst. Brian Drake is a Syracuse fan, and I've seen him talk about Aronde Gadsden before, just as a fan of watching Syracuse football. So he's taking big victory laps as well right now, which he deservedly should do. So I would say if there's anybody else that I also saw talking about Gadsden, it was Brian Drake. And I think the Domain kids were also Domain Dynasty. We're also talking about Gadsden a little bit too in the offseason. So there were people out there for sure. It wasn't just me. But I'm happy I was involved. Are you worried about JJ as a top 5 wide receiver given the Vikings quarterback struggles? I am worried when McCarthy returns, which it sounds like he's going to return next week. I believe that O'Connell said that if McCarthy is healthy for next week, which he has an extra couple days to get healthy because of the Thursday night game, that he will be the starter next week. JJ McCarthy will. So I'm a little bit concerned, but that just might be like a rest of season thing, not so much a dynasty thing. Yeah, I mean, it's still Justin Jefferson. Like, he was still solid with JJ McCarthy. It's just McCarthy has only played 2 games in his entire career. So we got to give him a little bit more grace, and maybe he can be better. Maybe the injury was kind of a slightly good thing if he was able to kind of sit a little bit more. He does need playing time. I'll never argue that, he should just continue to sit. But he does need playing time, but I think, it could be a situation where if they let McCarthy throw a little bit more and trust him a little bit more, that it could be good for Justin Jefferson for the remainder of the year. But I also am a little bit concerned that Jefferson doesn't have the top 5 ceiling, kind of like how Chase was with Jake Browning to a degree. That's kind of how I probably would feel about Jefferson moving forward. The fantasy stock exchange points were high on Gadsden. I don't think they're not in my my main rotation. If I start losing content or find myself with extra time to where I can consume content when I'm like mowing the grass or whatever, or shoveling, as we're going to be shoveling in the winter here soon, stuff like that. They're definitely on the peripheral of my content consumption, but I wouldn't say they're in my main sphere. So I didn't know that they were on Gadsden like that. But yeah, I said they're definitely, we were out there for sure. At the buzzer, I thought of a question. If you have Gadsden, Kraft, and Goddard on the same dynasty team, do we hold all 3 or am I selling 1 or 2? Vague question, I know, but let's hear it. I would be willing to sorry, hold on 1 second. Of the 3, I think I'd be willing to sell Goddard for sure. He's the least productive. He's the least valuable. You're not going to get as much for him as you would for Gadsden and Kraft. But if we're assuming that Gadsden is going to be a pretty solid every week starter moving forward, Kraft is also a pretty solid every week starter. So you have 2 guys that are really, really good, that it makes Goddard kind of expendable to where if you can move off of him for a positional upgrade somewhere else or just an extra second or somewhere in there, I think that that's the better move. I'm less willing to move off of Gadsden and Kraft. I mean, especially Gadsden. But I'm also less willing to move off of Kraft, even though it's going to get me more. I would feel better about my backup being Kraft / Gadsden than it being Goddard, especially with Goddard's age. He has an injury history as well. He is not always as involved on the Eagles' offensive game plans and stuff. And, the Eagles, their passing offense as a whole has been kind of weird this year. So Goddard would be the one that I think I would sell the most of these 3. I'm not opposed to holding him either. Like, if you're not getting at least a late second or something like that, or something that at least is interesting or helpful to your roster, I'm fine keeping on to Goddard. But I think of the 3, I'd be more willing to sell him. Need help, 12 PPR, 2 and 5. Is this dynasty or redraft, Luke? That's my first question. You like the stock exchange boys the most, of the flock guys? I like how it's the flock guys, because Mason's built himself an absolute empire over there. So kudos to him. And I also don't, if I was by myself, if I was not part of this DLF group, I probably would be trying to see if I can get involved with, if I could be a flock guy. But I mean, it makes sense. It's an empire for sure. But it's interesting that you like him the best of the flock guys. I don't know if that's a consensus take. It just seems like everybody gravitates towards the domain kids. Or isn't Dynastyland, Fantasyland, and Dynastyland that dude? Isn't he part of the flock? Not to say I don't like the stock exchange guys. I feel like the other guys are just a little bit more popular. So it's interesting. That's why it's just interesting that you say that you think they're the best. I won't argue against it, but it just seems like the other guys are a little more popular. Sold Pearsall and my 27 first for AJ Brown and Javante Williams with Mafa on my taxi, so don't worry. I love. I mean, a 27 first for Javante is fine. And AJ, I would take AJ Brown over Pearsall still. So I like this. I think this is a good deal on both sides. So I don't mind it. Oh, Luke, I didn't see you. Sorry, redraft. But Mustang, I think that's a good deal on both sides. And I think Monangai is probably a late second right now, Mustang, to answer this question quickly. I think he's probably about a late second. I think his KTC value is a little low. I was checking on that the other day when I was doing my rookie redraft. But I think that he should be like a late second. Sorry, Luke. Sorry. So redraft, you're 2-5. You're like a winner or a loss or two away from not caring about this league at all. Um, did you start Gadsden last night? That would be very helpful for you this year or this week. I don't think there really is much that you can do. You could maybe try to move. You did start Gadsden, nice. So you're set up pretty well for this week to maybe hopefully go to 3-5. Can you move one of your quarterbacks? I'd be curious on what if you were to keep Dak and move. I'm assuming that Jaden Daniels is the more highly valued quarterback in your league. So if you moved Daniels and Chase Brown, does that get you a Cam Scadaboo kind of player, or let's see, what is our Jaden Daniels and Chase Brown? You should be in that range. So yeah, you should be. You're kind of in the Judkins, Bucky, Scadaboo range ish for Daniels and Chase Brown, which could be interesting. Maybe you just trade Jaden Daniels for a running back. Maybe you trade Jaden Daniels for Omari and Hampton to kind of help you for the second half whenever Hampton does come back. Maybe you trade him for. I like Pacheco too, but I think I'd have Daniels over Pacheco. I don't really love Kenneth Walker as much. I don't want Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt. J.K. Dobbins, Daniels for Dobbins. I don't really want ETN either. Daniels for Warren, Jalen Warren. I feel like there's something there. That's where I would be looking at is you have both of these quarterbacks, and can you sell one of them to upgrade either at running back or wide receiver, probably specifically running back. And because I mean, I don't know how you're going to be able to unless you upgrade off of Nico or Ladd for just somebody who's a better wide receiver, obviously, because that's what an upgrade is, Addison. If you were to do Daniels and Ladd, theoretically that gets you into the Rashee Rice range. Maybe you get London. If you were to do Nico and Jaden Daniel, or yeah, Nico and Jaden Daniels, that theoretically gets you into the buy low Puka Nakua or Amon-Ra St. Brown range. Do you consider doing something like that? Maybe that could be the play. It's something around the Jaden Daniels is moving off of Jaden Daniels to upgrade one of your other two positions. I think that's where you're at. Is how I would try to shake up this team. But hopefully you move to 3-5 because you started Gadsden last night. Even though the JSN's on bye, and Gibbs is on bye. You've at least set yourself. We might go to 2-6. And Nico's out. Oh man, what the heck? Yeah, yeah. It's probably something with Jaden Daniels, but you are behind the 8 ball for sure, being 2-5, and then maybe going to 2-6 because of the bye weeks and Nico being out. Although if you started Ladd too, that was probably pretty helpful. And I think Chase Brown's gonna have a good week this week, and Dak is gonna have a good week, or Daniels, either one of them. Daniels is out. Never mind. So Dak should have a good week. I hate redraft leagues. I'm gonna be honest with everybody. I do not like redraft leagues. Just because you get into a situation like this. I have a league that's kind of like this where I didn't have Kittle and CeeDee Lamb all year, and then Chase Brown sucked and Chuba wasn't good. And so like I am also 2-5, and I just do not care about the league. It is so stupid to have a fantasy league and then just not care about it because there's nothing you can do. Why would anybody trade for any of my players? Why would I trade any of my great players away for not so great players or more the shots of better players to then try to win a couple of games and then get into the playoffs? That's why I hate redraft leagues, man. Because I mean, they're super fun to win, but when you don't win, they're pointless. So, Luke, I'm sorry that you're in the situation that you found yourself in. Maybe try to see if you can do something with Jaden Daniels to upgrade one of the positions, but that's probably the best that you're going to be able to do right now. Because I wouldn't trade JSN and I wouldn't trade Gibbs, but everybody else is pretty much on the block. Dominguez have a bit of a party atmosphere and grind out the live streams, built a great sense of community. I prefer the FCS player takes. Caleb Nemi has been trying to get me to do. I mean, he hasn't tried hard. He's just mentioned it, but he's like, we should do live streams like the Domain guys do, like do it like twice a week and just do like startups and stuff. And I'm like, I hate startup mocks and everything. So I don't know. I like doing this type of a live stream and stuff, but committing to it multiple times a week and at night, it's a lot. Props to them for being able to do that though, but I also like spending time with my family. But yeah, did you get your take on the NBA scandal from this week? How do you think that affects the perception of professional sports going forward? Dude, that was the wildest notification I got in a long time. Like the fact that the crazy one was like when I saw the notification that said gambling ring with the mafia, like my mind was blown. I was like, holy crap. Yeah, and then I got the notification about the Cavaliers coach was like given insider information about LeBron James and his health and stuff, and it's just a wild freaking scandal, dude. It definitely shakes up the professional sports as a whole for sure in terms of the betting and gambling sphere because I know all the immediate reactions were like, oh, now we need to look into the NFL, look into referees, look into certain players, blah, blah, blah. Because we already had like the Jameson Williams things. And not to say that he was like betting on or like trying to like make money by fixing the games and impacting where he can impact. Calvin Ridley, same. But I think it's harder to impact a game on a individual basis in the NFL if you're not the quarterback, essentially. Whereas in the NBA, there's only 5 players on a court at once, and there's only 12 people on a team, and there's can be such talent discrepancies between the third best player on your team and the sixth best player on your team, that you can impact the game in a much more meaningful way by purposely not playing well. So that's where I think the NBA is a little bit more susceptible to that kind of stuff, and it makes sense to why it happened in the NBA versus the NFL or MLB or NHL or anything like that. So the X-ray poker, the X-ray poker tables, um, Jesus, yeah. So it's crazy, honestly. I do think it's going to open up a little bit more of a um, it's going to open up more eyes on the impacts of like gambling and everything. And sports betting, and I'm wondering how that's going to affect like states and their legislation around it. Because I know um, Pennsylvania. Living in Pennsylvania, we're allowed to sports bet. So like, and I do every week, and my buddies do as well. I mean, I'm throwing like I bet like $10 a week, and I would like, all right, I bet you know a couple bucks here and there on all it. So like, I'm not crazy. My bankroll right now is like $100. And my buddies are basically all the same. Like, my one buddy, I think he's the most he has is $600, but he'll like cash out. He gets really lucky on parlays. I don't know how he does it, but he's like hitting tens and $10 parlays into $300 like fairly consistently. So he'll have a couple big wins, but he'll cash it all out. And like, so like, we're not addicted to it. But we do bet. But living in Pennsylvania, we're not allowed to, prize picks isn't legal here. Underdog pick'ems isn't legal here. Sleeper pick'ems isn't legal here. Our Bleacher Nation fantasy game, which I'm legally not allowed to play as an employee, but it is also not legal here for like my friends can't play Bleacher Nation fantasy as a pick'em style game. So I do wonder if more states are going to start looking into stricter legalizations of sports betting, and try to limit it a lot more. And like Chase Breakers has made a good point that like young players are going to come up doing it, and then get addicted. It's I do agree that it is toxic as well. Whenever people go after like the players themselves and whatnot, so it is definitely very pervasive and can I think become an issue if it's not already. Um, and I'm wondering if this scandal is kind of something that's going to open a lot of people's eyes, especially politicians, to where um, the they're going to start cracking down on it legally. Uh, and then maybe it wasn't legal what like 8 years ago or whatever. Pennsylvania is one of the first states to legalize it. Um, So I'm wondering if we go back to something kind of more like that. And I saw a TikTok where it was like uh me just watching my team on NFL, and it was like the commercial breaks just like FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, Fanatics. Like it's just like it's constantly shoved in our faces. Like Connor just like every single time. Dude, I have a baseball like phone game app that's like the stupidest mind numbing like I'm in the bathroom and I'm playing a baseball game on my phone, and it's one of those ones that it's like you can pay like $15 to like not have ads and to get like extra gems in the game or whatnot. um but if you don't pay, then you have to watch the commercials, and the commercials are all sports betting for me. It's literally every single one of them is like sign up for Fanatics right now, and you get $500 in bonus bets for $10, and it's every single one in a mobile app game. It's crazy. Every single one of them is like that. Um, so yeah, so I know myself, I'm constantly, you know, berated by all of it. So I can only imagine how all of you guys are too. So yeah, it's definitely It should be illegal to advertise sports betting, legal to do, but stop influencing people to bet. I agree. I think there should be the amount of marketing is insane. Imagine being a betting addict and still trying to enjoy sports. It's just it's constant, constant. That's the worst part of it, I think. Um, it's like it's it's not even like being like a recovering alcoholic or even an alcoholic, and then you just constantly see ads for like Miller Lite or Budweiser or Bud Light or anything like that. It's just now all become sports betting, and it's so easy because I can literally. It would take me here. It's Face ID login. Um, the Bucks play tonight, so I will take their money line. Hit $5 there. I didn't actually bet, but that was how quick it is to just lose me money right there. Um, I'm not actually gonna place that bet, but it literally took me, what was that, 15 seconds ish to log into the sports app and bet. It is crazy for sure. Yeah, like you can't advertise cigarettes or anything like that. I saw one ad one time for Zen and I was like, what is this? So yeah, it also doesn't feel real like walking into a casino, taking out cash and putting down a wage. That's the most dangerous part. 100%. This is the most dangerous part because unless you're in tune with like your finances and like, you're not like drowning in credit card debt, but then you just continue to reload your sportsbook apps off your credit card or anything like that, or that is 100% the most dangerous part because you don't feel the money leave you don't feel the money leave your hand whenever you make the bet, and then you don't feel your money leave your bank account to reload your sports book whenever you've lost so much. 100%. That is definitely like the most dangerous part of all this and how people get into real trouble with everything. All just numbers on a screen, Connor. You're exactly right. Yeah, it's dangerous for sure. I'm wondering if this NBA scandal is going to impact anything. If legislators are going to take a look at it and be like, "Hey, we need to really crack down on what the heck is going on with all of it." So we'll see. It's definitely something to pay attention to, I think. And it's funny for me to have because like I work for a company who's one of a lot of the revenue streams are centered around either we have the Bleacher Nation fantasy app or we create content about here's the best bets to make this week. I make content on here's the best bets to make this week. So it's weird being on that side of it too. Uh and like I said, I do bet. Like I follow my own stuff and I do all that and I generally do pretty well. But it's not like I'm turning, $100 into $10,000 by the end of the NFL year. It's like I turned $100 into like 125, and that $100 turns into 50, and then it turns into 80, then it turns into 40, then it turns into 90, then it turns into 120. Then I go back down to 80. Then I'm, by the end of it, I'm at like, like I said, like 120. That's my betting experience for the NFL season. There's an alternate reality out there where the mob is in cahoots with the betting apps. That reality could be now. That reality could be now. I did see an actual couple questions in here. Worthy or Tez for week 8? I would go with Xavier Worthy against the Commanders defense. Let's see what Paulson has to say. Worthy is wide receiver 28. Tez is wide receiver 34 for Paulson. So Paulson would also say Worthy. Mike, sorry if this was asked earlier. I'm late today. Where do you rank / value Rondé Gazin in Dynasty now? I rank him. I had a tweet last night where I said if Colson Loveland doesn't start breaking out, Rondé Gazin's a tight end 4 in Dynasty. So he's up there. Like he's probably a top 5 Dynasty tight end. If you want to debate him versus Loveland still versus Sam Laporta versus Kraft behind Bowers, McBride, and Warren, he's in there. He's probably worth a first round pick right now. In fact, I think he is worth a first round pick. Um, so like a late first round pick. He's climbing rapidly, but I think deservedly so because he just looks so good. Um, and yeah, like he's like I remember I told somebody, and I feel so bad about it now, but like after week 2 of Puka, this was like Puka had like a great week 1. Everybody's like, "Oh, Puka Nakua." No Cooper Cup though, so I don't know if that production is gonna hold. It might just be a thing. Week 2, he kind of does it again. And the guy's like, "Hey, would you sell Puka for an early second?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "In a vacuum, you're basically telling me that I was able to draft this 5th round draft pick in the 4th round, or I picked him up off of waivers or whatever, but he was a 5th round NFL draft pick that I could then instantly flip for like an early second." I was like, I think the odds on that are just pretty good. And now, unfortunately, Puka's worth 5 times that. So I was very wrong on that. And I feel bad about that call because that guy did do it. But that's how I feel about Aronde Gadsden, that he just seems different uh, to where he deserves to be at that value. And I'm not cashing out on that value right now just because of where I got him. Like it's like, reading the stock market, a lot of people that, if you bought Nvidia in 2012 and then sold when it was 10x in 2019 or whatever, you made a lot of money. But now it's 30x in 2025. Like that's how I view like Aronde Gadsden can still go up when it feels like a lot of people feel like they should just cash out now. That's how I feel like with Gadsden. He just keeps going up. Trade Javante and Amon Ra for Gibbs and Devontae Adams. Was there another? Yeah, there was a couple questions. Oh, I'll answer this one because I just read it. Sorry. Trade Devontae and Amon Ra for Gibbs and Devontae Adams. I would rather have Javante and Amon Ra for this one, Jack. Um, Seth says, as a Philly Steelers fan, would you bring Rodgers back or draft someone in the first round? So far in the class seems a bit underwhelming. Dante Moore looks interesting. Can I do both? I think I would like to do both, which I thought they should have done by drafting Jackson Dart. I was so mad that they passed on Jackson Dart. I was happy that they passed on Shedeur Sanders, but I was also mad that they didn't draft Jackson Dart. And I think I'm right. So I'd like to do something similar. Can I bring Aaron Rodgers back on another like nice 1-year deal, but then have a rookie waiting in the wings? So then we don't have to immediately put that. Like I agree with you. The class looks a little underwhelming. So, and given the fact that we're probably going to be picked like 20 again, so I don't know if Dante Moore is going to be there, but is it Carson Beck? Is it Cade Klubnik? Does Lenore Sellers fall? Does Garrett Nussmeier fall? I don't even know if those guys are going to be worth it. Is Drew Aller there? I don't even think he's going to be worth it in the first round. But if there's somebody there like that, like, and it could be, I forget, I don't know how to pronounce the dude's name, the USC kid, Maava or whatever. I would love John Mateer, but I feel like he's not going to be there at our pick. I would love Mendoza, but I feel like he's not going to be there at our pick. So it might be, a kind of, I would love it to be both, to where we have Aaron Rodgers, but then we draft a player so that we're kind of like how the Giants were with Jackson Dart. We're kind of like how I think the Saints wanted to be with Tyler Shuck, were with how the Eagles were when they transitioned from Wentz to Jalen Hurts. Just having a guy waiting in the wings, I think would be nice. I don't want to give up on Will Howard yet. So I do agree. Like BC said the same thing. Will Howard. I don't want to give up on Will Howard either. So if he can stay healthy or get healthy, I should say. Um, I do think Will Howard has just as good of a shot as a vast majority of the quarterbacks that we could be drafting in 2026. So there is that. So yeah. It'll be interesting for sure. I don't know if Rodgers even wants to play. but he is at least playing well enough that we are contenders right now. We'll just be curious to see if we continue that. If we are still contenders by mid-December, we'll see where we're at. Because remember, we were here last year too with Russ, and it all fell apart. So we'll see. How does Mike McDaniel still have a job? I have no idea. And shout out to you for advising me Darnold in first for Tua is a good deal. Indeed, it was. Yeah, now you can't even get either one of those guys individually for Tua. Ugh. Honestly, I thought this was the week that McDaniel was going to get fired. I think it's close. It's very, very close. Like it could be Monday. He's fired. I don't know how he still has a job now, but yeah. Jack, I said Javante and Amon-Ra. PPR and Rita. This is Javante and Amon-Ra for sure. I'd rather have the wide receiver, and I think Javante's better than Devontae. So I take Amon-Ra and Javante. Do you think there's pressure for fantasy analysts to do/be too much? Player evaluators, stat nerds, draft analysts, dynasty and redraft experts, betting and DFS generators. Man, what a question. I do, honestly. So I feel very blessed in the situation that I've found myself in to where this is a full-time job for me, and it's not, like I'm being paid like a legitimate salary from a company. I get health benefits and all that and 401k match. Like it's a normal job. I just happen to be a quote unquote fantasy. I hate calling myself a fantasy analyst. My title is video manager. But like it has become an actual job that I'm able to kind of diversify myself in obviously I was able to get this job by the work that I was doing for the DLF YouTube channel. We transitioned that over to the 4for4 side as well to kind of help build that up. And I also manage all the other, so like Bleacher Nation, which is the Cubs and Bears podcast, and then the Deep Dive podcast, which is the Betspert side with like Andy Molitor and Drew. I don't remember or forget how to pronounce his last name. Drew Dinchick. Deep Dive podcast. And so I'm managing like all these the content and all this and everything. So I've been able to diversify while still also being locally centered in just mainly dynasty and then just redraft fantasy. And I've started to branch out a little bit into betting. But I do think that for people out there that do not have this as a full-time job, I do feel like there is that pressure, which shouldn't be there. I don't think. I think you should isolate yourself down into being really good at just one thing. I think that's how the majority of people who've made it full-time were able to make it full-time, by being really, really good at just one individual thing. Because I feel like if you're really good at one thing, you can be, good at the other stuff. To where, like, if you look at Ray Garvin, is a former college football player who has turned into being a really good film evaluator and really good media personality, that he was able to spin that into full-time jobs at multiple companies and is now with Yahoo Fantasy Football. To where now he's, he can be a stat nerd as well because he has that trinity going for him. But he initially started at being a film evaluator based on his experience as a former college football player. You look at Matt Harmon and what he was able to do with reception perception. He was able to find a niche by charting wide receiver success that he then built into being partnered with the fantasy footballers and their UDK. And then he built it into his own website. And now it's kind of like his own thing, aside from Yahoo Fantasy as his main job. But then he's able to build that off of into being reception perceptions for quarterbacks and running backs. I believe he doesn't do them, but he's built it to where his website, or he has people that will also do them for the other positions. The Ballers were just phenomenal and as niche guys for fantasy football. Same with JJ Zachariason. Same with Matthew Berry. You look at just all over the place, being able to niche into one specific aspect is what has gotten a lot of people the ability to be full time. And I feel like that worked for me as well. Like I niched into just YouTube content and specifically Dynasty YouTube content that I then turned my statistics background into, trying to do stuff with the marker system. And even though that's not like heavy statistical modeling and everything like that, like I could do it a lot deeper and do like the linear and multilinear regressions and try to do all that kind of stuff. But I don't, because I try to intentionally keep it simpler for the wider audience so that I can explain it easier than just saying, well, my model says, and this regression says. I intentionally kept it simpler for that. So I was able to niche down into just going all in on YouTube. And then when that worked, I was able to expand. And then whenever that worked, I was able to, and that's kind of how I think a lot of people should go about it. But I do agree that I think there is a lot of pressure. A massive truck just drove past my house. There is a lot of pressure on people who are not full time yet, that they feel like they have to be good at everything in order to get the widest audience, to get the most eyes on their content, to then find that full time role if they're trying to go for that full time role. And I think that that inhibits their ability to be good at any one individual thing because they're trying too hard and spending too much of a part time because they're actually, they're actually working full time jobs, probably have families and all that kind of stuff, and they're trying to find time to be an evaluator, be a stat guy, and a draft analyst, be a dynasty and a redraft expert, be a betting and a DFS guy. It's just too much, and I think you gotta niche down for sure if you want to be successful. And I think that's true for most anything. Is trying to just niche down to be really, really good or great at one individual thing, and then getting that down allows you um, to get that. Once you get that process down, you're able to expand and then do more and more from there. Um, who do you suggest for film study? I started getting into film study this year to better know college prospects without knowing assignments is hard. With just TV game film, it is impossible. I do agree with that. I don't even feel like um, I don't even feel like I have like the best recommendations for film study just because I'm not in that world as much. Um, I would highly recommend Jetpack Galileo, um, because and the website that he has built for I think it's still called the FF Astronauts. I'm not entirely sure what, but I know he's built out like a whole suite of like here's it is still FF Astronauts. That he has all 22 film essentially, or like game clip cut up uh film for players that you can then watch yourself. But then he is also, his process for watching film is phenomenal. One of my biggest disagreements, I'll say, that's not the best word, but one of my biggest disagreements, I guess, with film watchers as a whole is the subjectivity of it. And that people just don't have a process and they're just like, well, I just like how his feet moves. I like that he's able to lower his hips and get in and out of the break. I like his vision here because it looks like he sees that hole and then he has the acceleration to go. And if you showed 10 different people the same few plays of a player, they might have 10 different opinions of if that player is actually good or not, or the ceiling or everything like that. Whereas I think with analytics, I think it's easier to be more consistent and it's easier for a wider group of people to reach the same conclusion. So that's my biggest issue with film as a whole. Now, there are I wouldn't say a lot, there are a handful of people that are very good at processizing their film to actually translating what they see on film into numbers, and then have a process for what those numbers mean, and then grade out players like that. So Jetpack Galileo, I think personally, it's him and Matt Waldman, I think, are the two best at that themselves, um, for their personal processes on how they can transform what they see on film into data that once you do that year over year over year over year, you're able to uh, historically compare and run it as if it was numbers, like statistical numbers. Um, Dynasty nerds, I think, do a pretty good job of it as well. Um, they've been starting to do that for the past couple of years with Jared Wackerly, and why am I blanking on uh Rich? Rich, I think is solid because he just has the experience, but um, I don't think he's as good of a film watcher personally. Um, I think he's a very good analyst for sure, but I think that Garrett Price is the other one. I think he's also a very good film watcher. Ray is a good film watcher, but I think Ray is transitioning into film. I mean, his Yahoo fantasy work isn't like this, but I do wonder if Ray has more of the NFL mindset in mind and not like the fantasy mindset, which usually they go hand in hand. Um, but uh, I think Ray does a very good job of breaking down film into simpler things for a more casual audience and then analyzing it to give his takes on certain players. But then I also think, and this isn't a fault of his, I just think that this is his college background past, is that because he understands the game so much and what these players are doing and seeing by being actually in those rooms himself at a time, that um, he delivers a lot of football takes, not fantasy football, but like football takes as well. Which again is not a knock, and usually they go hand in hand. But I think that that was something that he can do at certain times or oftentimes, especially whenever he's branching out and he's not talking about specifically quarterbacks and running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. He can dive into the defensive players a lot, which is a great strength for him, and the linemen and everything like that. So that's basically the grouping that I trust with film. Matt Harmon's data obviously is like that's like tip top for wide receivers. So I trust him and what he sees a lot. Um, so those are the guys that I would be looking to go after because those are the guys that I watch or listen to try to confirm what I'm seeing numerically if they're also seeing that filmily on film, film wise. And if they're not, that makes me question what I'm seeing numerically, or am I too high? Am I too low? Is there something that we could find, a common ground in what they're maybe seeing or not seeing versus what I'm seeing? Those are the players that become the most interesting, I think, to me, is the disagreements between film and analytics. Like Matthew Golden this year, I think is a peak example of that. I remember the initial person of that was Riley Ridley, the wide receiver for. As you gotta be careful with the name, but Riley Ridley, the wide receiver for Georgia, like 5 or 6 years ago, who ended up, I think, being a day 3 pick, but film guys loved him. Analytically, he was garbage, and he ended up not being good in the NFL. But film guys loved him, and I remember that being like he was the film versus analytics guy that year. And usually there's one or two every year that you find. So those are always fun. But they're also the most interesting guys to disagree about. But yeah, from film perspective, I think those are the guys that I would go for. Uh, uh, why am I? I need to find. I need to find. There's one more. Uh, is it Brett? Brett. He has a massive YouTube channel too. Somebody in the comments has to know. Brett. I'm trying to find him because I think he's a fantasy points guy, or he's got his own massive channel. Um, Why can't I think of his name? It's Brett for sure. Now I got to look it up on YouTube. Nope. Brett Coleman. His film breakdowns are incredible on YouTube. So I recommend that as well. But he seems to be very football approached versus fantasy football. But like I said, usually they go hand in hand. Yeah, Brett Coleman, Kollmann. That one. Also incredible film work. But as I mentioned, it's not so much from a fantasy perspective, but he's very good for sure. The the Fortnite avatar, you love to see it. Neil killed you. Do you? I'm assuming, is this your Fortnite account? I'm just curious. You've got some shorts on here. I like it. I like it. Help bench one between Olave, CD, and London. I think I would bench. I'm never benching CD Lamb. I'd probably bench Olave this week. Yeah, Paulson has London and Lamb at 5 and 6, and he's got Olave at 9. So there really isn't a bad answer, but I think I think it would be Chris Olave just for the lower floor. I don't know if Lamb doesn't get Pat Surtain, which he might not. Pickens might get Pat Surtain. That would free up Lamb a heck of a lot. And then London, I could see if you wanted to make an argument that they won't throw as much against Miami. So I can understand that. And if you wanted to play Olave, that's fine. But I also think that London could be a major reason as to why they just beat up on Miami. What kind of asset would you add to Hunter to get to Rice right now? I would add probably an early second. I probably wouldn't pay it first, but it would be like an early second or like that fringe player that's rides the gap of a first and a second. Man, it's 318. Holy crap. All right, let's can't wait for the Simpsons mini season of Fortnite. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know. I'm not a Simpsons guy. I don't really watch it, so I'm sure it could be fun. But I've also not cared about the main battle royale fan of Fortnite for quite some time. I am a Reload Blitz OG player. I haven't touched the main battle royale in months. It just doesn't. It hasn't interested me. If you can order one meal as your last meal on Earth, what are you having? You can pick the entree, side, and beverage. Last meal on Earth, so make it count. Oh my gosh. Uh hmm. Well, I got to be honest with you. Mm, it would be. This is gonna sound so like naive and unexperienced with meals. It would be a Texas Roadhouse steak and baked potato combo with just give me a Coke and a Texas Roadhouse steak and about 30 rolls with butter. That's it. I am obsessed with Texas Roadhouse. So that's probably the last meal on earth. Mm, that could do it. Just load me up on carbs and calories. I'm telling you, man, I would eat probably if I knew it was my last meal on earth, I would probably eat no less than 10 baskets of those Roadhouse rolls and butter. And then I would just cram down that steak and baked potato for sure. That's it. You can get me on a home cooked meal from my mom. I'm trying to think what that would be. We did we just called it chicken and bow tie noodles, where it was essentially just chicken and bow tie noodles with Alfredo sauce. But the way she made it, I don't know what she did to it, but it was incredible. Maybe that's just a nostalgic, like, it's cold. I come home from school. That's for dinner. She would do salmon patties as well. She would just buy some salmon and grind it down and bread it, put it and fry them. I put a little bit of ketchup on those, and then we would usually have some sort of pasta side and veggie side to go with that too. That's another one. Those would be on the short list. But the Texas Roadhouse rolls, man. I mean, oh, incredible. All right. I've lost a lot of people over the past couple of questions, but I love the chill vibes on the end. Maybe we should always end the stream with just like chill vibes. Get all the questions out of the way for 2 hours, and I've been going for 3.5 hours, and what the heck? All right, so I'm gonna pull the plug here so I can go and do some other work before the end of the week, and because it is is my wife's anniversary, my wife and I's anniversary tonight. Grandma's coming over to watch the kid. We're gonna go out to dinner, um, maybe hang out and do some other stuff while we're out, free from the kid for a little bit. So I got that on the horizon as well for tonight. So appreciate everybody for hanging out for the past like 3.5 hours. Appreciate everybody for all the support and all the super chats for sure. Definitely hope you guys have a tremendous rest of your Friday, a tremendous weekend. I hope all of you win all of your fantasy leagues or lose them if you want to lose them if you're rebuilding in Dynasty. So hit that like button, hit that follow button. I'm sure everybody here is already subscribed, already liked and subscribed because you're the diehardest of the diehards on the DLF channel. So I appreciate all of you so much. Chasing Breakers, have a great weekend. Thank you for the well wishes, Sir Brooks. Enjoy your weekend as well. I'm sure we'll be talking on X. So yeah, appreciate everybody for hanging out, and we'll catch you guys next week for another Friday AMA, and then all the other videos and stuff that I've got on the docket. So we'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a great weekend. Later, guys.